Hey everyone, how are you doing? Recently our channel got a strike, and we'd like your help to keep it active so we can keep bringing you new works every week. Subscribe, leave a like, and enjoy the manhwa. One day, an ancient master who was about to reach the pinnacle of truth realized he needed to find someone to inherit an old mission, something left unfinished by previous generations. His goal was to guide this person to the summit of existence. Many people considered this story a mere legend, a fairy tale that no one took seriously, but there was one person who firmly believed in it: Baek Jayun, the next leader of the Fire Dragon sect. Baek Jayun believed because he had been chosen. He single-handedly defeated all the other heirs from rival clans and cults, certain that he would reach the peak of the martial world. That was his path, or at least it was supposed to be. Over time, however, he grew old and was abandoned by everyone. The ancient god who once guided him ceased his blessings. Only Baek, tired and sick, remained, until one of his disciples appeared. This disciple had been an experiment, the first survivor of a project that aimed to create the immortal body. The creature, who had once been a human child, had now changed. Within him still burned the hatred for those who destroyed his family. Even so, he was silenced, for a test subject was not allowed to speak without permission. His superiors noticed that he could survive for weeks without food or water, and reported this to the master. Baek Jayun replied that it was already enough. He had endured many years to reach this point, but all he received in return were monsters. The scientist in charge asked for more time. He believed he was close to completing the immortal body, but something went wrong. His hands moved on their own, and he ingested the substance that turned him into a monster. In desperation, he begged his master to spare him. Meanwhile, Baek Jayun suffered. Weak and coughing blood, he lived as a man on the brink of death. Still, he cried out to his god, asking to be shown the secret of immortality, but his own master responded mentally, calling him a fool. The immortal body had already been completed. At that moment, the monstrous boy attacked Baek from behind. Though he looked like a monster, he was whole, healthy, and overflowing with power. He wanted to understand why he had been chosen as the vessel of the evil god. He asked why, even after a life of devotion, he had been betrayed. Still, his mission was completed at the end of his life. The evil god responded by asking if he truly believed his task was complete. He said that Baek still did not understand the truth about the world and regretted it. So he revealed everything directly into his mind. Baek Jayun could not bear what he saw. He fell to his knees, feeling defeated. All his strength, all his lifelong effort had meant nothing. Before the revelation, the new vessel received the god's instructions. He knew the boy hated the world, for it had ruined him. Now, he would have to deal with everything that existed. The god would take care of him in exchange for his vengeance. Thus, the boy would become a demon. He would destroy everything and leave nothing behind. All would be under his feet. With his new strength, he massacred all the soldiers of the Blood Cult Palace. On a dark night, an old man met with former allies. It was a gathering of great names. Yukbi, the king of Fis, commented that it had been a long time since he last saw that old man. Also present were Jin Seolhi, the Empress of the North, Abbot Hyun, master of the Shaolin Temple, and the current leader of the Fire Dragon sect, Baek Muryong, who respectfully greeted the Sword Emperor and asked if his journey had gone well. The Emperor, however, cut off all formalities. He said it was time to stop wasting words and stated that ever since he left the martial world, spies had been following him everywhere. He wanted them to explain the situation immediately. Baek Muryong then got straight to the point. He revealed that Wudong, Zhongnan, Huashan, and all the major states and sects had been destroyed. They did not know who was responsible. They knew nothing about his motives or identity. The few survivors who faced him could only describe him as a true demon, someone obsessed with fighting and massacre. Because of his brutality and lack of restraint, he came to be called the Great Mad Demon. And on that day, the most powerful figures gathered with the goal of putting an end to that madness once and for all. At that moment, the great demon himself appeared. He arrived calmly and remarked that the place even felt familiar. Observing the 5 great masters gathered to await him, he mocked them, saying it was a warm welcome. The Sword Emperor, staring at him, thought the title Mad Demon was no exaggeration. Looking directly at the enemy, he felt as if he was facing death itself. Without hesitation, he drew his sword. He said that this man alone had brought madness to the world, and that was reason enough for him to wield his sword once more. The strike he delivered was the legendary Heavenly Grace sword, a divine technique that sliced the great demon's body in a single instant. When he sheathed his sword again, all that remained was a smoldering body on the ground. Yukbi, the king of Fis, commented that it had been too quick. If it ended so soon, it would lose its charm. He even joked with the others, saying he had warned them that this great demon thing wasn't that serious. However, his speech was interrupted when he realized everyone was shocked by what they saw. Before them, the great demon's body began to regenerate completely. His limbs reattached as if being stitched together with his own flesh and blood. Confused, Yukbi wondered what it was. Baek Muryong then thought that it must be the legendary immortal body technique. Until then, no one had truly believed it existed. The great demon admitted that the strike he received was impressive, but said it was now time to have some fun. When Yukbi noticed that the Sword Emperor was still standing next to the enemy, he shouted for him to move away. But the Great Demon replied that he had already dealt with him. Moments later, the Sword Emperor collapsed face down. A deep slash across his abdomen had completely defeated him. The Great Demon then looked at the others and asked who would be next. Jin Seolhee, the Empress of the North, urged calm. She asked whether Baek Muryong, as the leader of the Fire Dragon sect, knew anything about the situation. Muryong replied that he was not sure, but he had read something similar in an ancient martial arts manual. The death of the Sword Emperor filled Yukbi with rage. Although everyone told him to stay calm, it was no use. Driven by anger and pain, he charged at the enemy with all his strength, attempting to crush him with a devastating strike. The impact was so violent that the explosion pierced through the palace walls. It was a punch powerful enough to destroy an entire city. However, the Great Demon remained unharmed. Worse yet, his power seemed to grow even stronger. With a cruel smile, he began pressuring Yukbi, admitting that his martial art was effective, but that it was now his turn to return the favor. The Great Demon used the exact same technique as Yukbi, the exploding storm, against him. But before it could become fatal, someone intervened. Abbot Hyun, master of the Shaolin Temple, appeared to protect him. From the impact, he lost half of his left arm, but managed to prevent Yukbi's death. Observing this, the Great Demon mocked his arrogance. He said that for someone who claimed this would be nothing, he sure was suffering a lot. Yukbi, visibly shaken, apologized to the monk. But Abbot Hyun replied that there was no need. If Yukbi had not acted at that moment, the Great Demon would have reached Abbot Hyun and caused an even greater tragedy. It was clear that before anything else, they needed to defeat that monster. Confident, the Great Demon claimed he had a body capable of withstanding the Fist King's martial art, asking whether his body might be indestructible after all. But as he moved in to attack again, he was caught off guard. Jin Seolhee, the Empress of the North, intercepted him and pierced his heart with a blade of ice. Within seconds, he was frozen to the bone. Unable to move, he could not reach the monk. Frozen, the Great Demon sarcastically said he was flattered to see the ice martial art up close. Indeed, the power of the five great masters was real. They truly deserved the titles they carried. Baek Muryong, leader of the Fire Dragon sect, said that if he liked it so much, then he should enjoy what came next, because now he would die. The strike he unleashed was not just physical. Using his most powerful technique, he sliced the Great Demon's body in half with the Eclipse Blade. But it was no ordinary slash. The blade summoned a dark force that imprisoned the target in shadow. From the cut in his chest, black bands emerged, as if mummifying the demon with dark energy. Within moments, the enemy was sealed. What remained was only a statue. Abbot Hyun, astonished, confessed he had never seen anything like it, and asked what Baek Muryong had just done. The leader explained that it was the Eclipse Blade, an ancestral treasure passed down only to sect leaders. According to legend, its strike sealed the target in eternal darkness. However, since it had never been used before, he did not know how long the seal would last. 3,000 years later, the Great Demon was still sealed, now in an isolated laboratory on planet GSP Zone 3. Inside a special capsule, his body remained motionless. At that time, Mark, a member of the Earth promotion team, officially arrived on site. He warned the technicians about the sensitive objects nearby, asking them to be careful, as everything there was extremely fragile. However, he was not alone. As he passed by his teammate, he noticed that she seemed distracted, as if something was occupying her mind. That woman was Lina, the team leader. She murmured that she had finally arrived in that cursed world. Mark, as cheerful as ever, ran to greet her, far too excited for her taste. He admitted he honestly did not expect her to volunteer for the GSP team, especially coming from someone like her, known for despising other alien races. And now, there she was, surrounded by all kinds of creatures from across the universe. As they made their way through the crowd of intergalactic beings, Lina warned that everyone there was dangerous. But Mark replied that he liked the tournament precisely because of that. There, in the arena, everyone was on equal footing. Lina disagreed. She did not believe the others thought the same way. She pointed to the crowd, showing how complacent they seemed in that environment. When she looked back, she saw Mark wearing a silly alien hat and holding a colorful balloon. Without patience, she remarked that maybe it would be better to leave him behind. He could stay at the Rollo, the common entertainment area. Lina asked if he really liked being surrounded by those strange aliens. Mark told her to be careful saying that kind of thing out loud, especially as the team leader. She then said that the place was dangerous precisely because of that. No one there was the same. Not even a rookie like him could ignore that truth. At last, they arrived at their destination, the GSP Tournament Arena, the place where the balance of power between civilizations was tested. The official announcer of the event welcomed all viewers who had come from the farthest corners of the universe to witness that spectacle. It was the Grand Festival, held every 100 years, a tournament that offered the chance to raise the level of an entire civilization. Mark, curious, asked if all that speech Lina gave was just an excuse to watch the tournament. but she replied that it was not quite like that. She had been sent to analyze and uncover the weaknesses of the enemies, and now she was there with that clear objective. The announcer then declared that on the left side of the arena stood the competitor whose civilization ranked 972. He was the representative of the Ifrit civilization, and his name was Agni. On the opposite side, facing him, were the representatives of the Piglo civilization, whose warrior was Panon, from the civilization ranked 9,630. Meanwhile, in the grand exhibition hall where all the rare Earth artifacts were being displayed, some people were unpacking the objects. One of them noticed something strange. There was a noise coming from inside one of the crates, and cracks began to form. Another dismissed it, saying he was going crazy. However, at that moment, one of the great demon's eyes, which had been sealed, finally broke free. The eye began to move, silently and menacingly observing the surroundings. It was then explained that on planet GSP, located about 500,000 light-years from Earth, a combat tournament was held every 100 years. This tournament gathered representatives from various civilizations scattered across the universe. The victorious civilization gained access to the truth of all things and was freed from all negative effects that plagued its people, such as disease, hunger, war, and internal conflict. In addition, the planet's pride was completely restored and unified. With such a possibility at stake, planet Earth became extremely excited. After all, they had been officially selected to participate in the tournament. The competitor sent to represent them was known as the strongest in the world. Everyone believed in him, believed he could reach the final and bring victory. Meanwhile, the fight between Agni and Panon was still ongoing and was quite literally on fire. Agni was a massive creature made of flames. His incandescent body caused destruction with every movement, and his opponent was already close to being reduced to ashes. Panon was severely injured, barely able to stand, and it seemed like he would be defeated at any moment. Agni, with his imposing presence, delivered a blow so powerful that part of the arena was incinerated on impact. Some spectators commented that he was far too strong for the level of civilization he represented. The creature himself declared that they were finally recognizing his power. In the middle of the crowd, Mark watched everything with attention and concern. He wondered how a human could possibly face someone like Agni. He also wanted to know if Lena, who was analyzing the situation, was truly managing to find a weakness they could exploit against that monster. To him, it felt like they were just wasting time there. Despite not feeling well herself, Lena managed to notice something important. None of the competitors, up to that point, seemed to belong to a level 3 civilization or higher. That surprised her, because if the tournament truly had the potential to change the fate of an entire civilization, one would expect the participants to be much more cautious or strategic. From that observation, she concluded that Earth's greatest weapon in that tournament would be the arrogance of its opponents. Meanwhile, in the stands, a little girl from the Piglo race was desperately cheering for Pano. She cried and begged him not to lose. The despair on her face was evident. Mark thought sadly that they had been very unlucky in the match draw. Panon's opponent seemed to come from a rank 3 civilization, which made the fight completely one-sided. Next to the girl, a young boy mocked the situation, saying they should just finish off that trash. The little girl, crying, asked him not to speak like that. The drunken boy arrogantly replied that such a reaction was expected from an inferior race, even criticizing her manners. Mark tried to de-escalate the situation and asked them to leave before they got caught up in a fight that wasn't theirs. However, at that moment, the little drunk boy became enraged at what he considered an insult and transformed completely. His body grew to an absurd size, nearly 20 times bigger. He gained enormous muscles and a threatening aura. This was the true form of Mr. Pick, representative of the Pixies civilization. Lena, observing the scene, criticized his behavior. She thought it was outrageous for someone so powerful to use his transformation to intimidate a child. She questioned why he acted with such arrogance if he came from a more advanced civilization. His behavior only proved that he remained an idiot despite all that strength. Pick, on the other hand, mocked the situation. He said they must be handing out drugs to the other spectators because there was no way someone as small as him should be speaking to him that way. Mark, uncomfortable, made it clear that he was not part of the discussion. He hadn't said anything and preferred to stay out of it. Lena was furious. She said he was just an arrogant failure. The situation worsened by the second. Pick stepped toward the stands, stomping so hard that the ground shook. Amid the tension, Mark, the team leader, insisted that everyone leave the area immediately. The leader looked back and questioned what kind of subordinate would abandon her commander at a time like that. But Mr. Pick was already approaching, aiming a punch at the group in an attempt to crush them all at once. However, a patrol drone appeared and ordered him to stop immediately. Lena calmly explained that it was a security drone responsible for maintaining order inside the arena. According to the rules, no one was allowed to attack or behave aggressively unless they were in an official match. The drone then asked if that pixies had caused any direct damage. Lena responded that he hadn't hurt anyone, but he was definitely showing off, completely drunk, trying to intimidate them and exhibiting dangerous behavior. The drone asked again if that was true. Faced with the situation, Lena firmly confirmed, saying that he had approached with the intention of attacking and that everyone present had witnessed it. Pick, irritated, responded with aggressive sarcasm. Mark, uneasy, asked Lena not to stir up any more trouble with that guy. She, on the other hand, said it was better for him to face the consequences now, before hurting someone. Mark, concerned about the escalation, asked her at least to stop provoking him. At that moment, Pick noticed the badge hanging from Lena's neck, indicating that she was a registered participant in the tournament. The drone reinforced the question, demanding to know if he was really going to proceed with that behavior. Pick responded with disdain, saying he just wanted to show off his muscles a little, but was already satisfied. Then he returned to his smaller form and declared that he would see those brats some other time. Mark, watching him walk away, murmured that he never wanted to see his face again. Shortly after, he asked Lena if she was really prepared to handle situations like that. She said yes. She explained that she would never risk being in a place full of dangerous aliens without being properly prepared. A little later, the same Piglo girl who had cheered for Panon approached and thanked them for their help. But Mark said they hadn't helped anyone and tried to push her away. He claimed that she was only distracting Lena and asked the girl to leave. Mark then reflected on Lena's impulsive nature. When he tried to comfort the child, he was caught off guard when she called him a coward and said he had done nothing. Even so, the little girl respectfully bowed to Lena and left. Mark felt deeply offended by the girl's attitude. Meanwhile, the main fight continued. It was clear that most of the audience was rooting for Agni, who advanced with devastating power, burning more and more of the battlefield. Lena, watching everything, thought that she had expected a power gap, but what she was seeing was simply absurd. Agni, confident, shouted through the flames, taunting that he could no longer find his opponent, as if they were playing hide and seek. Lena seriously wondered if it was truly impossible for a human to defeat a monster like that. At that moment, she remembered her childhood and the first time she saw death up close. She recalled the war, the plague, and all the suffering that haunted planet Earth. She told herself that she would no longer leave room for weak thoughts. Mark, noticing her state, asked if she was okay. She was trembling, but replied that she was. She said she just felt a little nauseous. It was then that the announcer informed the crowd that an unexpected twist had occurred. Panon, whom everyone believed to be defeated, had appeared behind Agni and struck him directly on the head, using a blind spot. The impact was so strong that it smashed Agni's entire flaming mass into the ground. The announcer explained that the attack had been a critical hit. While Lena watched, fully immersed in the battle, Mark received an urgent call. He said they needed to return to the exhibition hall immediately. There was an emergency happening. On the way back, Lena asked if he had double-checked everything. Mark confirmed that he had. She then commented that she had already expected something to go wrong, because whenever everything seemed calm, something unexpected always happened. Still, she thought it was a good idea to return. She had seen what she needed to see. In fact, after that twist in the fight, she felt even more hopeful. Seeing Panon, small and underestimated, defeat Agni, the flaming monster, reignited her faith. Maybe planet Earth really did have a chance. But while she was still processing that thought, Mark was suddenly hit by a gigantic punch that knocked him down brutally. Later, Lena woke up, being carried by none other than the wretched Pick. Mark lay completely beaten on the ground. Pick, noticing she had regained consciousness, commented sarcastically that she did not need to worry, because no one there was going to die just yet. Lena, confused and furious, asked if they were doing all this just because she had provoked him earlier. She said they were on planet GSP and would soon be intercepted by security. Another Pixies, however, responded with scorn. He said that humans were indeed very arrogant for such a poor civilization. He explained that much of the GSP planet's security was actually handled by engineers from their own civilization. Pick added to the comment with contempt, saying that they, the Pixies, knew exactly how to bypass the local security. He then stated that he couldn't understand how the Galactic Federation had accepted cursed Earthlings like them. Lena, without hesitation, told him to shut up. She reminded them that humans had never wanted to join that damned Federation. It was the Federation members themselves who had come to Earth. They were the ones who forced humanity to join, using threats and coercion. And because of that, because of the disease the Federated ones brought, millions were suffering and dying on the planet. It was all the Federation's fault, which didn't even take action. Even knowing the situation, they let the humans suffer. Upon hearing this, The pixies just laughed. They said it only proved what they had always believed. Earth's civilization was indeed pathetic. The Galactic Federation would never do charity for primitive beings like them. As they mocked, someone in the group found Lena's presence strange and asked what sect she belonged to and who had brought her there. They suggested maybe she was from the Shaolin Temple, known for its reputation in the martial world. But that man thought the inside of the temple felt a bit different now. He said it even seemed overly extravagant. Lena, confused, wondered who that man was. Stranger still, she thought he might be speaking some Earth language. One of the pixies, irritated, yelled at the man to stop speaking that weird language and to use the common tongue. That was when Lena realized the man had no idea what was going on. He didn't even seem to notice that no one there could understand him. He was speaking in a different language and had no grasp of the situation around him. In Korean, Lena stepped forward and ordered the stranger to go to the security room immediately, stating that they were breaking regulations. But before she could finish, she was brutally struck down by Pick, who silenced her with a blow. The man, watching everything unfold, said that now he understood. Apparently, not everyone had changed. He then raised his arm and used a devastating technique. The first thing he did was unleash an explosive storm that completely disintegrated the upper body of the pixies who had been holding Lena. The stranger looked at her and murmured that at least she seemed to understand what he was saying. He told her he had many questions to ask. Then he warned her if she tried to run for any reason, she would be dead. Lena, still trying to make sense of the situation, asked what kind of questions he had for her. More than that, she wanted to know how he was so strong, but the man complained that she was speaking another language and asked her to use his. He explained that if she wanted to survive, she would first need to explain where they were. In Korean, Lena replied that they were in the promotional building Z. The man became confused. He asked if that place wasn't the Shaolin Temple. As he spoke, he stepped on Pick's head, who was already unconscious. Lena could hardly believe what she was seeing. The man continued to speak aloud, reflecting. He said that, actually, it made sense that the place wasn't the temple, since it was far too noisy. It was very different from the silent atmosphere typical of the bald monk's temple. Lena, still shaken, asked who he was. But instead of backing away, she began to observe him carefully, showing no fear. In truth, she was curious. She looked at him from the front, then from behind. She analyzed his posture and even touched his skin, gently squeezing his arm. She commented that he didn't seem to be wearing any kind of equipment. He was just a regular human like her. But she still couldn't understand what had caused that absurd explosion. The man, surprised by the touch, asked if she was mocking him. But Lena, with total composure, simply withdrew her hand and asked what his identity was and which faction he belonged to. He was confused and asked how she did not know who he was. He asked if she did not recognize him. He thought he was a well-known figure. She replied honestly that she had no idea. She asked if he was some kind of celebrity. But before the conversation could continue, something caught Lena's attention. She had to warn the stranger immediately. One of the enemies, one of the pixies who was with Pick, was approaching. With a threatening tone, he was already asking how that man dared to raise his hand against his kind. The demon watched the enemy trying to attack him with a massive punch, but he dodged it with a simple tap, as if it was nothing. He said the other one only talked nonsense, and then drove his fist into the creature's stomach. After that, he released an energy blast that sent the opponent flying. Lena was surprised. Had he really blocked that strike with just a tap? The demon asked if she still did not know who he was. Lena began to suspect that he must be someone important, given how much strength he had shown. She apologized, explaining that she had been traveling to other planets and did not spend much time on Earth. The demon, confused, asked what she meant by Earth and why she was talking about other planets. Lena tried to justify herself, saying she had been involved in work outside of Earth. At that moment, Mark woke up, still injured, trying to understand what was going on. Lena was relieved to see him awake. The demon, on the other hand, started getting irritated by the number of weak people showing up. Mark tried to figure out who that guy was. Lena also did not know for sure, though the name sounded familiar. Both admitted they had no idea who he really was. She thanked the demon for saving her, but made it clear it would be hard to cooperate if he did not reveal his identity. Faced with this, the demon decided to introduce himself as Ma Jinwal, the great demon responsible for the destruction of 4 sects. Even so, Mark thought he was just being delusional, while Lena, after thinking for a moment, remembered that she might have heard that name before. Suddenly, one of the pixies got up, furious at having been defeated by an earthling. Mark understood they were being attacked by the pixies because of something that had happened earlier. The pixie blamed the suppressor on his body for not being able to fight properly. While the human showed concern, Ma Jinwal remained calm. Lena, worried, asked if he could defeat that opponent even in his current state. Ma Jinwal was confused by the question. He wanted to know what she meant by that. Did she think he was not using all his power? power? That made things even more interesting. He teased her, asking if she was really sure he was holding back. Lena suggested they wait a bit to investigate the opponent better before acting. Mark, suspicious, asked what that lunatic was doing there and if he was also a human. He said they should run, but Lena decided to stay and watch the fight. Mark, however, ran away immediately, unwilling to take the risk. Lena considered his decision rational. However, as she observed the immense power radiating from that human, she began to think he might be a first-level individual. Meanwhile, the pixie managed to get up and tore the suppressor collar from his neck, declaring that the rules no longer mattered. He intended to kill his opponent right then and there. His body began to transform. His muscles expanded. Electricity started to vibrate around him, and the entire room was affected. Since the environment was made with Pix technology, he could control the surrounding metal and use it as a weapon, launching everything at Ma Jinwoo. Even after being struck by that pile of metal and electric energy, Ma Jinwoo remained unharmed. He said he was having fun now and called the bald one to show his true power. The pixie could not understand how he was escaping his techniques. He thought an earthling could never be stronger than him. He kept firing metal until Ma Jinwoo vanished from sight. In reality, he was behind the enemy, even climbing onto his back as if he were playing. Ma Jinwoo observed the opponent's movements closely and began to mimic them. He said he wanted to try that too. In moments, he was using the same powers: electricity and magnetism. The pixie panicked when he realized that damned earthling was using his own ability against him. Ma Jinwoo said he really liked that technique and, as a form of thanks, promised to end him quickly. Without showing any effort or pain, Ma Jinwoo attacked the pixie directly, using the tiger's palm to pierce his body. The pixie felt even more humiliated because his own power was being used against him. But Ma Jinwoo corrected him, saying he was not imitating. In fact, he had stolen that power. He said it with disdain, calling the opponent an imbecile. Lena, watching the scene, could not believe it. She wondered if that was even possible. Had he really defeated someone from a level 3 civilization? She considered the whole situation madness. Ma Jinwoo, on the other hand, was analyzing the martial art he had just copied. He found it interesting and then asked Lena to take him to the leader of that bald enemy. Still surprised, she held his hand and asked if he was really an earthling. She could not understand where so much strength came from. Even so, she said she could take him. There was a place where extremely powerful people gathered. If he wanted, he could even become Earth's representative in the GSP tournament. Sometime later, Mark returned to the scene and found complete destruction. He was confused and could not figure out who could have caused it. Beside him was Virtus, one of the judges of planet GSP. Virtus wanted to confirm if what Mark had said was really true. A pixie had put the entire human race at risk. Looking around, the bodies of the pixies were scattered everywhere. A level 3 civilization had been defeated, and only a civilization highly specialized in combat could have done that. Mark felt relieved. He thought it was good that Earth was not under suspicion. After all, no one would believe a single human could have caused all that destruction. Virtus, curious about Mark's worried expression, asked if he was concerned about someone. Mark replied that he was worried about his friend, who was also an earthling. Virtus remarked that she was surely in danger, since whoever did that was certainly a dangerous criminal. He promised they would find him, reconstruct the scene, and identify the culprit. At that moment, pieces of the ceiling began to collapse and fell toward Mark's head. Virtus, in an extremely exaggerated way, told him not to worry. He used a powerful solar laser just to destroy a small piece of falling stone, declaring that he, the great judge of justice, was there to save him and avenge the human race. With a single attack, he created a massive hole in the floor. Mark, seeing that, thought this would cause a lot of trouble. It was clear that things were about to get out of control. Meanwhile, 30 minutes before that scene, Ma Jinwoo had explained his story to Lena. To her, it all sounded like something out of an ancient legend. The concept of a martial world seemed fictional, but at least it explained why he did not know the common language. It had not existed in his time. Lena reflected on what she had just witnessed. He had absorbed the power of the pixies. Could humans really have that ability? At what point in history had they gone astray? While she was thinking, Ma Jinwoo simply turned away and began walking off. Lena asked where he was going. He replied that he did not need her help. He said he could manage on his own. But Lena, determined, ran after him and insisted that he did not understand the world he was in. Ma Jinwoo replied that it should not be too hard. In his time, he traveled alone on foot across all sects. However, when he looked around at the landscape, he realized that he might indeed be completely lost. Lena tried to warn him. She called him an idiot and said he needed to understand where he was. She introduced him to the modern world, the 26th century of the human race. It was the era of space exploration. She explained that all those around him were not humans but aliens from other planets and universes. Ma Jinwoo, still trying to understand his surroundings, asked what was so special about interacting with these strange creatures. Lena patiently asked where he would place humans in a comparative ranking with those beings. Now wearing a new shirt, and even with his hair combed, he began to reflect on it, still unsure of how many of these creatures existed. Lena explained that there are about 20,000 civilizations spread across the universe. Within this vast cosmic chain, humanity holds the lowest position. When Jinwoo heard that, he was surprised. He had just defeated a group of enemies and wanted to know if those he had faced belonged to a civilization superior to his. Lena confirmed they did. Even if he was right, she warned him to be careful saying that aloud. Civilizations are organized into 5 levels. Humans belong to level 1, and even within that level, are among the weakest. Jinwoo dismissed the concept of ranking, saying it was a waste of time. To him, the important thing was to gain power, not worry about classifications. Lena repeated her earlier suggestion. She knew that what he truly wanted was to face stronger enemies. He agreed, albeit indirectly. Then she explained that, at that very moment, a rare tournament was taking place, one that only happens every 100 years. If he missed this opportunity, he would have to wait another century. All civilizations wanted to join, and that meant many powerful opponents would be gathered. When Lena tried to convince him once again, Jinwoo pushed her hand away and asked if she was trying to force him to fight. She denied it, saying she was only repeating what he himself seemed to imply through his actions. Jinwoo, irritated, told her to shut up. He called her ridiculous and said it was absurd that she thought she could order him around just because they had exchanged a few words. To him, that was insulting. Lena, embarrassed, apologized immediately. She said she had not meant to offend him. Even so, she insisted that if they performed well in the tournament, they could change the fate of all humanity. Jinwoo, uninterested, replied that he saw no value in climbing the ranks of a space tournament, but Lena insisted it was crucial. She explained that to move up in the civilization classification, all it took was good results in that tournament. The levels are defined based on the power of the cosmos, a vital energy that structures all of existence. All supernatural powers that defy the laws of reality exist only because they are connected to this cosmic energy. Little by little, Jinwoo began to understand. If he wanted to access that kind of power, he would need to level up. However, current Earthlings had no way of winning the tournament. That was why Lena hoped Jinwoo would fight for them. She explained that the benefits of moving up a level were not limited to cosmic powers. The greatest gain was something even more valuable: enlightenment, a profound knowledge that no battle or lifetime of effort could ever reach. Curious, Jinwoo wanted to understand what she meant by enlightenment. Lena explained that all knowledge accumulated by humanity so far, even what seemed to be the result of centuries of progress, was nothing more than a crumb compared to the wisdom of the space eras and extraterrestrial knowledge. Earth had only ever accessed a tiny fraction of that information, which is continuously transmitted by a colossal intelligence that inhabits the universe. This knowledge is controlled and monopolized by level 5 civilizations, who use it however they please to maintain absolute dominance over the lower ones. Jinwoo, increasingly skeptical, said it all sounded like a selfish excuse from Lena, who just wanted to use his strength for her own interests. She firmly denied it, saying what she proposed was for the good of all humanity. Still, Jinwoo was direct. He said she should find someone else who shared that vision. He was not the type to risk his life for others. Before he could leave, Virtus appeared. Without giving any chance to react, he disintegrated Jinwoo with the power of a star and declared that the execution was complete. To him, it was unthinkable that such a weak civilization could have caused so much disruption. Lena, completely devastated, did not know what to do. But Virtus, merciless, said that for her direct involvement as an accomplice, she would also be executed. Amid the chaos, Jinwoo regenerated. His body reassembled itself from flesh and blood. He stood up furious and asked who Virtus thought he was to leave him in that state. He called him a bastard and told him to stand still, calling him a pile of trash. Meanwhile, in a far-off corner of the universe, on Street C, Sector 3 of planet GCSP, a little girl named Mala excitedly told everyone that she had been helped by an Earthling. Grog, curious, asked if they had fought a Pixies. He said that if it were true, then Earthlings really were as brave as people said. Kulak commented that they owed them one. Shortly after, they all reunited with Panon. Mala ran up and hugged him tightly, and Grog asked if he was okay after everything that had happened. Panon replied that he was in great shape, but wanted to know what the hell was going on further ahead. In the distance, a crowd was surrounding a burning area, saying that Judge Virtus was fighting someone. He was trying to deal with the Earthling who had killed a Pixies. Kulak found that combination strangely familiar. As he listened, Mala approached Panon and made a quiet request. At the same time, the battle between the judge and the great demon was causing everything around them to collapse. After burying Virtus, Jinwoo mocked him, saying that was what happened when you exploded someone's body. However, the judge had not been defeated. He retaliated with fury, melting all the metal that covered him. He was surprised to see that Jinwoo had managed to absorb the cosmic power of the Pixies, seeming even more dangerous than expected. Virtus asked how that was possible, and Jinwoo, out of patience, replied with sarcasm, saying it was too late for regrets. Then he unleashed a technique called Earth-Splitting Kick. While most people were evacuating the area, Lena stayed behind. She wanted to see that battle through to the end. But suddenly, someone grabbed her from behind. It was Panon himself who told her to stay quiet because he was there to save her. Lena wondered if they were only helping her because of Mala. Panon also asked why they were still there, but no one answered. The mission was to get the girl and leave as quickly as possible. Grog said that Mala was already with Kulak and told them to hurry. Lena, confused, asked why they were taking her. Panon replied that it was a repayment. The civilization of Piglo valued that kind of gratitude. Then everyone started running, carrying Lena. Panon warned that the Earthlings needed to flee GSP immediately because if the judge started targeting all the humans there would be no salvation for humanity. Virtus easily blocked Jinwol's next strike, preparing a catastrophic explosion. But the demon appeared behind the judge. However, Virtus also had a hidden card. A concealed hand fired a powerful laser that scorched Jinwol, splitting him in half. Lena, upon seeing this, screamed and begged them to let her go. She said that if they were going to save someone, they should save Jinwol, not her. Grog responded that it was impossible to defeat a monster like that. But Panon scolded him. He reminded them that Lena had saved Mala, and those were the ideals of his people, to repay with actions. A bit ahead, they found a scorched and split body. It was Jinwol. Lena immediately recognized him, saying he was the other Earthling. Panon realized that if it was him fighting Virtus, then the real warrior would still appear. And in the middle of the energy spreading through the air, Virtus appeared behind them all. He was about to incinerate Jinwol's body, but then Jinwol coughed up blood and began to move. Grog, stunned, asked how that guy was still alive. Even Panon couldn't believe it. About 30% of Jinwol's body was on fire, yet he was still resisting. Virtus, shocked, said that regeneration should never exist in an Earthling like him. He ordered all members of the Piglo civilization to step away from the crime scene because they would arrest those responsible. Grog saw an opportunity and said maybe they had a chance. Panon asked if he really believed they would survive this. Lena said yes. He just needed time to recover from his injuries. Panon said he knew exactly where to register Jinwol so he could enter the tournament. If he were officially recognized as a fighter, not even Virtus would have the authority to attack him. Grog, irritated, yelled at him to stop with that crazy idea. But Panon was already preparing to face the judge. He revealed that the cosmic power of the Piglo race was shadow manipulation, and that he was there, using the gifts of his ancestors to help the one who had helped Mala. That was the ideal of his people. Meanwhile, in the registration office of the GSP tournament, the attendant said she didn't understand what they were saying. Grog apologized but insisted that Jinwol's registration had to be done immediately. Lena introduced herself as Earth's official representative. However, the attendant, Kuranos, hesitated when she saw the state of Jinwol, saying he didn't seem to be in good condition. Even so, Jinwol insisted that everything was fine. He said he had ultra regeneration and impatiently asked her to register him right away. The commotion in the area soon drew the attention of several other races who began to approach and whisper among themselves. Many wondered if the humans would really participate in the tournament, considering they came from a weak and disorganized civilization. The pressure on the attendant quickly increased. Everyone began demanding their own registrations. They wanted to secure a spot in the tournament, especially if an Earthling was participating, since to them that meant an easy win. The commotion intensified, and under pressure, Kuranos decided to accept. But when she finally gave in, she realized that Jinwol had disappeared. Lena and Grog were terrified, trying to understand where he had gone. On G Street, Sector 3 of the district, Virtus had already defeated Panon, who lay unconscious on the ground. As he observed him, the judge mocked the idea of someone like him sacrificing his life for Earthlings. But behind him, Jinwol was about to launch an incredibly powerful strike. Virtus tried to retaliate with a light-based attack, but Panon, even injured, used the power of darkness to trap him. Jinwol declared that no one could judge Earth without first feeling the weight of its punches. The next strike was strong enough to knock the judge's helmet off. Meanwhile, in the registration hall, Mark was still there. He thought to himself that none of this was his fault. If he had followed the team leader, the situation would probably be even worse. When he saw the explosion caused by Virtus, he wondered if the fight was still going on. At that moment, he received a call from Lena herself. Back on the battlefield, Virtus, now without his helmet, was trying to hide his face. Jinwol, although seriously injured, acknowledged that his opponent was strong, since he had withstood one of his most powerful punches. He said he would now fight more seriously, but Virtus couldn't accept what had happened. He was furious that Jinwol had destroyed part of the sacred equipment that came directly from the divine. He tried to assert his superiority again, claiming to be faster than Jinwol's attacks, but ended up surrounded. In reaction, he launched another energy beam that vaporized Jinwol's body. Mark, still watching from afar, commented that he could see Jinwol. Lena, surprised, asked if it was true. He confirmed and said that although it was good to know Jinwol was still alive, it wasn't the time to relax. Grog also wanted to know if he had already regenerated. Mark replied that although Jinwol was still alive, he was in terrible condition. His body was completely burned, and regeneration was slow and painful. Still, he endured. Virtus, determined to end it once and for all, was preparing the final blow. But at the last moment, Kyranos, the tournament attendant, appeared before everyone and ordered him to stop. She declared that Jinwoo was now officially registered as a competitor. The judge was confused, asking how that was possible since Jinwoo had been with him the whole time. But everyone there remembered the earlier moment, when dozens were shouting and demanding the Earthling's registration, accusing Kyranos of prejudice. At that time, Kyranos had said that it would never work, not even with management's authorization. Lena called her inflexible, and Grog also accused her of prejudice. One of the competitors then asked if there wasn't a system for registering absent fighters. Another confirmed he had heard of such a thing. Kyranos thought for a moment and admitted that this policy really existed, though it was only intended for the most advanced civilizations. Even so, she decided she could use it. She handed the forms to Lena and left it in her hands. Grog, however, complained that the form was written in an alien language. He said it was ridiculous. Kyranos replied that the policy was created for the convenience of superior civilizations, and it was only natural it was written in their own languages. But then everyone watched as Lena calmly filled out the form. Kyranos thought she was faking it, but upon reviewing the documents, she realized they were all correctly filled out. She was in shock. She couldn't understand how a human from Earth knew such a complex language typical of advanced races. At that moment, Virtus could do absolutely nothing against Jinwoo, as he was now officially registered as a tournament competitor. Even outraged, Virtus questioned how a simple Earthling like Lena could understand the language of high civilizations. Kyranos, the attendant, reflected that a human brain should not even be capable of understanding a single word of such an advanced language. She concluded that Lena had probably memorized every vocabulary and grammatical structure possible. Now it was too late. Canceling that registration would be literally illegal. Virtus decided to leave the matter for later. He remarked that the universe seemed to be conspiring in Jinwoo's favor, a warrior willing to risk his life for him, an ally capable of secretly teaching a forbidden language. Everything indicated that hidden forces were working to protect that human. For now, he would accept the situation. He said he would let it slide only this once. With that, he activated an immediate transport, sending Jinwoo to a special prison. Mark, still in contact with Lena, reported that Jinwoo had disappeared in a bright yellow light. Lena was completely in shock, not understanding what had just happened. But Kyranos, still at the scene, told her to calm down. She explained that Virtus had only sent him to a prison, probably to a recovery room. A week later, Jinwoo was still inside a regeneration capsule. His body remained in critical condition. His abdomen and left leg had not yet been restored. Mark, while observing, doubted anyone in that state could compete. He asked Lena if she really believed in that, but Lena firmly replied that she knew he would recover in time. At that moment, a new figure entered the room. It was Clarice Ive, commander of Earth's team. He said Lena had been insisting on the same idea for a long time. To him, Jinwoo looked like just a young man clinging to life, weakened. He declared that he had placed too much trust in her decisions, but now he would follow the original plan. The tournament would begin in 2 days. Lena asked for more time, but before she could continue, another young man appeared. He spoke with confidence, telling everyone to trust him. This was Marcel Blede, the most powerful man on Earth. Lena watched him closely and with hope, silently asking Jinwoo to wake up. Clarice told her not to worry. He affirmed that Marcel was indeed the strongest on Earth, personally chosen by him, and that the suit Marcel wore represented the pinnacle of humanity's knowledge. After that battle, no one would dare underestimate the humans anymore. At that moment, the system presented the next threat. Earth's opponent would be from a race called Bicerian, currently ranked 10,320 among the civilizations of the universe. Their planet was a true hellscape, a dense rock covered in toxic gases and rivers of lava. To survive in that environment, the Bicerians had pushed their bodies to the absolute physical limit. Their representative in the competition was Croc Jaybrick, a warrior notorious for his absurd endurance and colossal physical strength. Lena warned everyone to pay extra attention when facing him due to his durability. But during the meeting, one of Earth's team members interrupted, saying that the information was already enough. He claimed the Bicerians were on the same level of civilization, and there was no reason for excessive concern. The combat team manager then spoke firmly, telling everyone to leave the matter to them. He assured that everything would go smoothly. His name was Marshall Steele. Marshall commented that Lena should take better care of herself. He had heard that her branch had been destroyed. At that moment, a robot appeared and transmitted a message informing everyone to proceed to the waiting room as the next match was about to begin. Marshall then said it was their turn now, but Lena asked them to wait. She said she had a carefully planned strategy. Still, Marshall replied that there was no need for that and suggested they just enjoy the show. Lena, suspicious of his confidence, thought that the aliens in that tournament would not fight by Earth's rules. To defeat superior civilizations, humans would need analysis, strategy, and intelligence. She knew that because they were considered inferior, winning with brute force alone would be impossible. At that moment, the commander himself fired at Lena, but the shot didn't hit her. It was just a deliberate scare. He said that wasn't the kind of thinking he wanted to hear before the match. He thought Lena was underestimating humans too much. Although Marcel intercepted the bullet mid-air, Marshall commented that the old commander was going crazy. After all, he really had pulled the trigger. The commander explained that their team had worked hard and that this was their best year so far. Marcel then activated his armor and asked Lena to trust him. He said she should cheer for him, even if she wasn't confident. The tournament announcer thanked the audience for their patience. The preliminaries for the 8th bracket were about to begin. Meanwhile, Mark, distracted, was eating a strange snack that looked like a giant insect. He wondered when Lena would show up. Soon she arrived, grabbed a similar snack, and asked why he was eating alone. Mark replied that he wasn't alone, since he had met a few of her acquaintances. Grog and Panon were also there, having come to watch the match. Lena found that suspicious and asked if they were following her. She found it a bit creepy. Grog replied it was just a coincidence. He assured her they were just lucky, since the opponent for that round wasn't too hard to beat. Even so, Panon noticed that Lena didn't seem very excited about the match. In the arena, the representative of the weakest civilization, Earth, was announced. Marcel Blade. Grog found it odd that the muscular fighter supposed to represent the humans wasn't there. Panon commented that he was probably still in the recovery capsule. Lena confirmed this, but asked how he knew. That was when Panon showed a power suppressor strapped to his arm. He explained that he woke up with it after going through the capsule, and that the suppressor's intensity varied depending on the species. He asked Lena if she didn't find something suspicious about Jinwal's body, and she remembered a strange device attached to his neck. Mark questioned the function of that power suppressor, and Lena explained that some cosmic abilities consume the user's life, even in the short term. That's why civilizations that manipulate cosmic power are required to wear such devices when visiting other planets. Panon clarified that during the tournament, the power suppressor cannot be removed. Mark then concluded that the martial arts used by Jinwal weren't just simple combat techniques, and Lena confirmed. She said Jinwal also used cosmic powers. Moreover, his extremely fast regeneration was a rare and mysterious trait. She reflected that, based on what he had said earlier, the strength that he and other humans from that era possessed was more than just cosmic energy. So she wondered what could have happened on Earth while he had been sealed. Meanwhile, a new competitor was announced. He was one of the few survivors from one of the most inhospitable planets in the Bysarian civilization. However, at that moment, the Bysarians themselves were being defeated by the Pixies. The bald pixie, who had survived the confrontation with Jinwal, observed the arena and said that the human there must be the same one who defeated him. Yet now, he seemed different. The pixie said he heard that the Earthling would represent Earth. That was the one he wanted revenge against. At that moment, the entire Croc race was cheering for their representative. However, Croc Jabrick himself didn't show up. The announcer, annoyed by the sudden interruption, asked who dared to ruin the match like that. Then Twinkus, the representative of the Pixies, appeared before everyone. The announcer, unconcerned with identities or explanations, demanded the real competitor return immediately. But Twinkus made it clear that Croc would no longer participate. Instead, he suggested taking his place. This caused an uproar among the Bizarians, who were furious at the suggestion. The announcer, however, told everyone to shut up and warned that the small representative should choose his next words carefully. Twinkus then got straight to the point. He stated that the opponent had not yet been fully punished. According to him, that Earthling was responsible for the death of one of the Pixies' allies. Pate, shocked by the accusation, couldn't believe that a mere Earthling had killed a Pixie. To many, that seemed absurd. Others began to reconsider, thinking maybe they were underestimating the humans. Maybe they were stronger than they appeared. Twinkus explained that the Earthling exploited a weakness of his race to cause the death. Now, he wanted a chance to avenge his ally with his own hands. Mark, concerned, asked Lena if all of this wasn't just a big misunderstanding, but she reassured him, saying that the announcer would certainly not allow it. Yet, to everyone's surprise, the announcer did accept. In fact, he thought it would make for a great show. Lena thought it was all absurd. Amid the confusion, question, another Bazarian asked what would happen to his own race. The next moment, his head exploded. Mark, alarmed, told Lena to duck that cursed head because something strange was going on. The announcer, fed up with more delays, said the match had already taken too long to start, and it was time to stop stalling. Meanwhile, Marcel was dizzy, feeling something strange inside his own mind. The announcer declared that this would be a great match. On one side, a killer. On the other, a warrior avenging his race. Now the entire crowd turned against Marcel, calling him a murderer. The word echoed over and over, creating a hostile atmosphere around him. Lena, outraged, went to the commander and said this had already gone too far. They needed to protest to the tournament committee. The commander, confused, asked what exactly she wanted to contest. Lena explained that there was a competitor in the arena who should not be there. They were calling Marcel a killer, and the announcer was letting it happen. It was a clear violation of the tournament's rules, but the commander didn't see how that changed anything. After all, the narrator was the owner of the tournament. He could do whatever he wanted. He was one of the 6 gods of the universe. His name was Insapian Leviathan. The commander then asked who, after all, could stop the decision of a god. Lena, frustrated, realized that the rules of the tournament were never meant to be followed. Faced with that, she decided she would play dirty too. Meanwhile, Marcel started getting hit by cans and booed by everyone. Not understanding, he asked what he had done to make the crowd's mood shift so quickly. He also asked who that new opponent was, since it wasn't the same one from the morning briefing. Even so, he concluded that none of it mattered. His goal hadn't changed, so he rushed toward Twinkus, trying to land a punch. Despite the speed, Twinkus managed to dodge. Marcel commented that the opponent had good reflexes, but the fight was just beginning. He started to use the technology of his own suit, which included various turbines. With them, he could move extremely fast and fly through the air at different angles. Grog remarked that maybe that earthling wasn't as bad as he seemed, but Penon, very serious, remained silent, observing every detail of the battle. Then Marcel launched a super punch with his suit. The impact was so strong that Twinkus was thrown far away in a massive explosion. Many believed the fight was over at that moment, but the commander wasn't so easily convinced. In fact, he was worried about Marcel. He remembered when they first met, during an impossible mission. At that time, it was just the 2 of them against all the criminals. During that past mission, the commander was badly injured and looked like he was about to sacrifice himself to distract the enemies and give Marcel a chance to escape with an important message. However, Marcel refused that idea. He fired a shot to distract the enemies, took responsibility for the situation, and told the commander he would handle it himself. After many gunshots, hand-to-hand fights, and intense combat, Marcel returned, carrying the bodies of the criminals. He declared that they would return to headquarters together. That was exactly why the commander chose him as his representative. Back in the arena, Twinkus was still standing. In fact, he looked completely unharmed. Marcel acknowledged his impressive endurance and decided to use another trick. However, in the blink of an eye, Marcel's left arm was ripped off and thrown away like a piece of meat. He screamed in pain and was completely destabilized, not understanding what had happened. Twinkus mocked his surprise, saying it was strange that he was so shocked, since he supposedly had fought against the pixie race before. Marcel, confused, said he didn't know what he was talking about, but before he could react, he was struck by a magnetic attack that completely melted his armor. Suspicious, Twinkus wanted to confirm his opponent's identity and asked Flock, the bald assistant, to do the verification. Flock confirmed it was indeed the right man. Given that, Twinkus said he never imagined someone like him could have defeated Senar. He demanded to know the whereabouts of the real killer. Immediately after, he tore off Marcel's left leg as well. The entire audience, along with the commander, was shocked and disgusted by that. Now, Marcel was on the ground, missing his left arm and leg, being slowly tortured by Twinkus. Marshall, watching the scene, screamed desperately for them to stop, saying it was already enough. But Marcel, even in that condition, said he would never give up. He tried to launch another attack, but was easily stopped when Twinkus simply lowered his fingers, pinning him to the arena floor. The pixie even yawned in front of his weak opponent. The commander, watching the scene from his room, cried out of rage and humiliation. Lena, outraged, questioned who that being thought he was to destroy the journey of an entire civilization. According to her, Earthlings were just getting started. Then she threw an object wrapped in cloth into the arena and said she would leave the rest to him. Flock, seeing this, recognized the young man and shouted that he was the one responsible for Peaky's death. Jinwal, furious, said that the next time he saw that man, he would be dead. He then asked where he was now. Meanwhile, Marcel, stretched on the ground and completely destroyed, was still resisting. Mark, desperate, tried to contact the team leader but didn't know where Lena was. was. Later, in the corridors, she was fleeing with Jinwol's body in her arms. Mark didn't understand anything, and clearly didn't agree with it. Lena carried the boy like a corpse, even with his tongue hanging out. Before doing what she had planned, she apologized to Mark, saying she would explain everything later. Then she punched him in the face so he could distract the guards while she passed. It was exactly at that moment that she threw Jinwol's body into the arena. The narrator, irritated, asked what was happening down there and ordered that woman to be removed, calling her trash, just like her entire race. Lena, defiant, questioned whether that was really trash. A warrior who had defeated 2 pixies on his own deserved to be called that? To her, he was the true representative of Earth. The insane demon Ma Jinwol found all of that very convenient. The audience was moved by the gesture. Lena then argued that if the narrator had accepted a substitution driven by revenge, he should accept that one too. Grog, watching, thought Earth was funny for challenging End, but Panon commented that it was a bold move. The narrator, in turn, admitted he was impressed by the Earthlings. Even so, he said it was too late because the match was over. But Marcel, still conscious, stated that no, he hadn't been defeated yet. The narrator, surprised, asked if he was still alive. The substitution was authorized. For Lena, that was enough. Earth's future was secured. However, the guard informed her that she would be sent straight to prison, which sparked outrage. Lena swore that he would pay for that. Twinkus questioned whether that guy had really killed 2 pixies. It seemed impossible since he wasn't even awake. That was when Jinwol finally awakened, confused and unaware of where he was. His awakening was so intense that the force suppression collar shattered completely. N. Sapien observed, surprised. That Earthling's power wasn't bad at all. He didn't expect that kind of entertainment from planet Earth. Jinwol commented that every time that guy showed up, it caused an even bigger stir. Meanwhile, Twinkus revealed that he had been looking for him. He could finally avenge his race. Jinwol asked if he was part of that same strange race connected to energy, but the warrior no longer cared about his weak lineage. He simply turned to leave the arena, saying he was going to find Lena to understand what was going on. However, Twinkus, using his magnetic power, grabbed Jinwol's arm and pulled him back to the center of the arena. He said he would show no mercy. The blow he landed was so powerful it broke his own fingers. Something felt off about the enemy's body. Tankus accused the enemy of killing one of his own and mocking his civilization. It was unacceptable for an inferior race to act that way. Jinwol was thrown to the ground, but quickly recovered thanks to his regeneration. Still, his arm remained broken exactly where Twinkus had grabbed it. He wondered what the judge had done to his body. At the moment, he couldn't use any martial techniques except for his immortal body ability. He had no choice but to fight the old-fashioned way. Twinkus's next punch, with his extendable arm, completely destroyed the Earthling's body. But Jinwol, now only a torso, crawled toward Twinkus and stuck his finger in his eye. Then he put his thumb in the enemy's mouth and punched his jaw, forcing him to swallow part of the finger. Even so, he was completely crushed. Only his legs remained. The crowd acknowledged Twinkus's strength, who had literally disintegrated the Earthling. Twinkus noticed the taste and asked what he had eaten. When he realized there was regeneration happening, he prepared to crush him again. Jan confirmed the situation. It was true. Jinwol began emerging from Twinkus's mouth, breaking his jaw completely. He was fully regenerated, and Sapien was impressed. That was a considerable blow. The Earthling seemed like a ticking time bomb. In response, Twinkus dislocated his own jaw to survive the attack. Grog commented to Panon that he never imagined someone would use regeneration offensively. If he landed 1 or 2 more hits, it would be over. Even Panon was surprised. A woman behind them spoke to Panon, observing that he wasn't as smart as he was strong. According to her, it was impossible for that Earthling to win. That had been his only chance. Grog was puzzled by the woman's presence beside them so casually. She calmly replied, asking him not to be so cold. She introduced herself as Acrimin, from the civilization of the star Euphoria, a space journalist. She said she became interested in Panon after he defeated Wagner, and especially after he blocked an attack from the invincible Virtus. Panon grew tense, asking how many people knew he was involved in that fight. Acrimin assured him it wasn't many, but that she had her ways. After all, she was a journalist. He wanted to know if the Earthling really had no chance. After all, he had faced Virtus. Acrimin agreed that surviving Virtus was an incredible feat, but she emphasized that if not for his extreme regeneration, he would have died. In her view, he was more of a combat beast than a true warrior. Grog argued that the Earthling possessed abilities nearing those of a third-level civilization, or higher. Even so, Acrimin insisted they were overestimating the civilization rankings too much. Superior civilizations existed for a reason. It was simply impossible for a human to defeat a member of a civilization with so many levels of advantage. While this truth was being spoken, Twinkus was completely crushing Jinwal's body with a mass of metal and electricity. And Sapien observed the scene carefully, trying to understand where such an immense object had come from. Ackerman, unshaken, replied that it had always been there. What was once a small metal sphere had now transformed into a colossal weapon. According to Ackerman, many aliens underestimated metal manipulation, seeing it as nothing more than a form of magnetic telekinesis. However, Twinkus was not like that. He manipulated metal at the molecular level. This allowed him to create absurd compressions of metal, and considering the amount of iron he carried within his own body, it was simply impossible for Jinwal to win that fight. In the following attack, Jinwal even tried to dodge, but Twinkus, using molecular manipulation, shifted part of his own body out of the way and counterattacked with such brutal force that he split the Earthling in half. And Sapien concluded that Twinkus had been hiding this power the whole time. Ackerman explained that for someone from a first-level civilization like Sapien, it might seem as if he was hiding something. But in truth, Twinkus had simply not revealed his trump card yet. The GSP tournament was broadcast across the entire universe and only happened once every 100 years. It was the stage where civilizations showcased their best. Using a trump card too early would be foolish. Besides, the metal Twinkies was using to destroy Jinwal's body was not just any metal. It was the same material that made up the hearts of the pixies. Using that against someone from a first-level civilization was, in fact, considered humiliating, yet he was doing it. Ackerman explained the origin of that metal. The pixies were known as the greatest iron artisans in the universe. All of them were born with a few hundred grams of iron in their bodies. By the 6th month of life, that iron would solidify and be expelled in a traditional process called iron ejection. The material expelled during this process was known as soul steel. Despite its low durability and limited practical use, this steel was preserved as part of each pixie's identity. However, a few years ago, the Galactic Federation emerged. It reorganized the balance of power. The pixie civilization, known for its peaceful nature, was massacred in the first round of the GSP tournament. Before the entire galaxy, they were mocked, and their reputation was destroyed. Their planet was plundered. Unable to watch his people suffer any longer, the king initiated an unthinkable experiment. Although Ackerman sarcastically pointed out how odd it was that an entire planet had just one king, the story continued. The experiment involved forcing newborns to consume metal during the first 6 months of life. The intention was to create stronger soul steel. However, 70% of the children died from being unable to eject the metal from their bodies. The resulting internal circulation failure caused the steel formed to be even weaker. Despite that, 1% of the children survived. Among them was Prince Twinkus, the king's son. He endured the iron ejection trial and became the master of eternal steel. He became the pride of the kingdom. However, even with all the fame, Twinkus was still just a child. One seemingly ordinary day in the royal palace of the Pixies, rumors began to spread. One of the guards said that Prince Twinkus had never truly passed the real trial. It was suspected that the king had stolen someone else's steel and given it to his son. Another guard was outraged, remembering how many children had died because of the experiment. Twinkus himself overheard the entire conversation and was in shock. That couldn't be true. He had also heard rumors that the steel formed after growth was identical to the proof metal. However, what he saw with his own eyes was a metal of horrible quality. He began to wonder whose eternal steel he had really been using all this time. After that day at the palace, Twinkus found a photo of his former caretaker alongside his family. In the image, there was a child, the caretaker's son. Looking closer, Twinkus recognized the shape of the eternal steel. It was the same as the one he used. At that moment, the caretaker himself entered the room and caught Twinkus holding the picture. Startled, the prince reacted with an involuntary electric discharge, hitting the old man directly. He hadn't meant to do that. He tried to call a doctor, but the caretaker, even injured, asked him to listen before dying. He revealed that his grandson had died due to the side effects of the iron ejection experiment. Around the same time, the king, an old friend, discovered what had happened and gave the eternal steel of that child to the prince. The caretaker explained that the truth didn't matter much. What truly mattered was that Twinkus had been able to wield that metal with strength and control, and that was the result of his dedication. He believed Twinkus could save their race. Soon after, help arrived, but it was too late. The caretaker had already passed away. From that moment, Twinkus made an unshakable decision. He would raise the rank of his civilization, no matter what he had to face. But before he could think more about it, Jinwal, the Earthling, simply stood up again. He was completely whole, a little exposed, but fully regenerated, and luckily his clothes had also reconstructed, covering his intimate parts. The regeneration was still advancing, even completing the final part of his head. Still, Twinkus did not expect to lose and attacked with a drill made of eternal steel, trying to pierce him before he was completely healed. shield. But Jinwoo, still without regenerated eyes, moved forward instinctively. He hit Twinkus with enough force to knock him down. Even while being pierced, Jinwoo ignored the pain, kept regenerating during the attacks, and kept striking relentlessly like a true beast. The beating seemed endless. No matter how injured he was, he just kept going. Twinkus began to wonder if that bastard had been hiding his strength the whole time. Jinwoo, confused about what was happening, said he didn't know what had changed, but he felt his internal flow had returned. Then he delivered a blow so powerful, it caused a huge explosion inside the arena. Outside the battle, Lena watched everything attentively, even as the guard insisted on stopping her. Ackerman was surprised. She hadn't imagined Jinwoo was hiding so much power. That changed everything. The Pixies had a lot of physical strength and defense, but their reflexes and speed weren't that high. Now, with Jinwoo fully recovered, Twinkus was having a hard time blocking the attacks, even with his metal shield. Panon looked at the scene seriously, but Ackerman asked him to stop reacting every time she said something. Meanwhile, Jinwoo, still with part of his head regenerating and smoke coming off him, continued hitting the shield with fury, asking if all of this was supposed to be taken seriously. Once again, he was pierced by a new drill from Twinkus, now charged with electricity. Even so, Jinwoo absorbed part of the electricity and, with brutality, pulled Twinkus out from inside the eternal metal. The impact was so intense that Twinkus began to question everything. How had the pride of his civilization been pierced? How had that earthling managed to break through him with his bare hands? Another Pixie, watching the fight, noticed that Jinwoo also seemed to be controlling metals. Twinkus couldn't believe it. How could someone from a level 1 civilization have that kind of power? Then he saw what was happening. Jinwoo had borrowed a piece of the arena's barrier and shaped a metal staff from it. Twinkus was outraged. How could an inferior race dare to steal his metal? In response, he activated his final transformation. His body was covered by a complex armor made of electricity and eternal steel. It was his final trump card. But when he delivered the first blow in this new form, Jinwoo simply smiled and said that this was exactly what he wanted. Jinwoo didn't know it was possible to build armor with eternal steel, but now he was facing one, a real armor, dense, full of energy and weight. Even with his body regenerating every second, he was being completely crushed by the punches of the metal brute. He was dismembered, pierced, and struck with brutal force. Yet, even under that impact, Jinwoo kept moving, dodging as best he could, looking for an opening. In the middle of the blows and the blood, he asked himself what to do now. That armor was absurd. It didn't seem like it would be easily pierced by any ordinary attack. But upon seeing it, he remembered something. There was a day in the past when he had tried to ambush the Invincible Steel Knight, a legendary figure of the martial world. That day, of course, Jinwoo was easily defeated and beaten mercilessly. The knight declared that he would deal with him as true martial arts demanded. However, in the middle of that punishment, someone appeared and stopped everything. It was the man named Mindal, the owner of the Zanwo armor, one of the 7 great treasures of the martial world. Mindal confronted the knight and asked why he was showing off in front of a child. He questioned why the knight had gotten so nervous at his arrival, because that child was no ordinary child. When the knight attacked, young Jinwoo saw something unbelievable. What Mindal did at that moment was something he never forgot, and now, facing Twinkus's monstrous armor, he decided to use the same strategy. He closed the distance, dodging quickly with minimal and precise movements. He thought he had done well to learn that technique on that day. After all, Mindal defeated the Steel Knight, and Jinwoo years later was the one who killed Mindal. Now he would use his technique to once again overcome the impossible. He focused all his strength and used the martial art he had inherited, the true energy-crushing fist. The impact was massive. It echoed through the entire arena, making even the ground vibrate. Silence took over the place. But Twinkus, even after the blow, said he felt nothing. For him, the attack had been completely useless. However, the truth was different. The blow had not struck the armor from the outside. In the next instant, Twinkus began to cough blood. He was drowning in it. Inside the armor, his body was being destroyed from the inside out. He was completely shattered. Jinwoo, covered in blood, his eyes still burning with energy, explained what had happened. Eternal steel was indeed no ordinary metal. It was a legendary treasure. But in the end, what truly mattered was not the equipment. What mattered was who used it. The robot's automated scan confirmed there was nothing left inside the armor. Twinkus was dead. The match was over. Twinkus had been eliminated. Grog quietly celebrated. He recognized it as the true power of a level 1 civilization. Panon, watching everything, commented that if that other red idiot had been in Jinwoo's place, they would have lost. Meanwhile, Ackerman, already walking away through the stadium halls, reflected silently. Approximately 15 billion years had passed since the origin of the universe. Even with all the infinite cosmic energy available to the civilizations, she thought she had seen every possible outcome. But now she could find no information on an earthling like that, she was beginning to get curious. Sapien, still at the center of the arena, declared the result. The winner of the 8th round was Madden, representative of Earth. Commander Clarice acknowledged out loud that in the end, leader Time Lena had been right. Bopin also commented that it was a historic moment. It was the first time a level 1 civilization had defeated someone from a higher civilization in direct combat. But before the event could end, something unexpected happened. Jinwoo, his body still bleeding and his mind pulsing with adrenaline, used his magnetism. He formed a dagger from the fragments of the eternal steel left behind by Twinkus. With a dark look, he charged at Sapien without hesitation. He spoke in a low voice, full of killing intent, saying that if this was the pinnacle of this damned world, then he only needed to defeat it. Despite his strike using the white smoke technique, Ma Jinwoo was completely obliterated. In an instant, his body became nothing but a pile of bones. Sapien declared it a draw and ordered someone to dispose of the body. Soon after, one of the robots reported that the recently broadcast fight had reached first place in its time slot. The number of viewers had surpassed 800 million. Sapien commented that it had been 900 years since something like that last happened, and proudly said that he had finally become more popular than the others. While one of the subordinates collected the remains of the body, Sapien asked what he was doing. Without hesitation, he disintegrated his own ally right there, stating that that body was the true secret to success. According to him, Ma Jinwoo was the star of the tournament and would be the one to attract the most viewers. Meanwhile, Lena was anxious. She had been forbidden from watching the fight and constantly wondered whether Ma Jinwoo had won the battle. She was nervous, unsure of the outcome. At that moment, she was surprised when she was personally summoned by Sapien, who asked her to retrieve her representative. Lena grew concerned, thinking they had lost, but Sapien said it was nothing serious. The problem was that her representative couldn't return on his own. He had been reduced to a pile of bones. Sapien assured her that first aid had been administered and that he should recover soon. When Ma Jinwoo woke up inside the recovery capsule, he was disoriented. He asked himself where he was. Lena, who had fallen asleep on top of him, woke up when she noticed his movement and said she was relieved to see him alive. She commented on how impressive his regeneration ability was. Ma Jinwoo was confused by her presence and wanted to know what those devices around him were. Lena explained that they were tools to help with his recovery, and that, while he wore that collar, he would be considered just another Earthling like all the others. Ma Jinwoo rejected that idea and tried to remove the collar, but Lena told him it was impossible to take it off by force. Trying to stay calm, Ma Jinwoo took a deep breath and focused on sensing the core of his K energy. However, he noticed the flow was blocked. He could not circulate his energy at all. Lena, trying to distract him, asked about his experience in the tournament. Ma Jinwoo, confused, wanted to know why she was talking like that. She went on, saying that he had fought well against the Metal Warrior in the center of the arena and asked if he would like to fight again. She added that if he agreed to participate in more battles, all the devices on his body could be removed. Jinwoo, upon hearing that, ordered them to stop and get him out of there immediately. Lena realized her attempt to convince him hadn't worked and decided to try another method. She released Ma Jinwoo from the capsule, but he quickly grabbed her by the neck, demanding that she remove the suppression collar as well. At that moment, Marshall appeared, limping with a crutch. He said he had been called there and, surprised by the scene, asked if the two of them were in some kind of relationship. Deanne, irritated, released Lena and demanded to know who that guy was. Lena wasted no time and explained that the collar could not be removed by force, but proposed a solution. She suggested a bet. Ma Jinwoo would have to face Marshall right there. If he won, he could remove the suppressor. But if he lost, he would have to compete in the arena like everyone else. Later, the three of them were in the cafeteria, sitting in front of a colorful but unappetizing meal. It was a kind of purple amoeba with a very unpleasant appearance. Ma Jinwoo, still irritated, ate with his hands and said he just wanted to get that collar off. Lena commented that they could have just fought already. He had only come because he was hungry. Ma Jinwoo complained about stomach pain, saying it felt like he was going to explode. He asked if she felt like that every day. Lena replied that it was like he had never experienced hunger before. Deanne then remarked that it had been so long that he could barely remember what real hunger felt like. Lena, thoughtful, asked if there had been people in the past who simply didn't eat. Ma Jinwoo said that even if it was rare, there were still people better than the weaklings from that time, including those who were there with him. Lena argued back, saying that everyone would see what he was capable of once he faced Marshall later. Ma Jinwoo, surprised, asked if she was talking about that idiot. Lena told him to get ready, since he was just sitting there eating like a lazy brat. Marshall, for his part, claimed he also knew 40 different monster arts and every lethal army technique, but he said said it jokingly, as he was missing one or two limbs. Ma Jinwoo replied that even with all his limbs, the result would be the same. The two began arguing right there during the meal, and Lena decided it was better to settle it once and for all. They proceeded to an underground floor, an area reserved for GSP training. Lena explained that in that place, they could fight without interruptions. Ma Jinwoo complained that they could have settled things right there in the restaurant, but understood that Lena wanted to avoid trouble. She commented that the future was no longer a violent era like Jinwoo's, where people fought anywhere. He replied that this was exactly why he considered everyone there a bunch of cowards. Marshall told Lena that he really wanted to help Earth, but he felt that something about this was wrong. He knew that Ma Jinwoo had defeated Twinkies even while wearing the suppressor collar. He did not believe he had any real chance against him in his current state. Lena, however, assured him that everything was already prepared and asked Ma Jinwoo to take his place in the arena, as she still needed to discuss some details with Marshall. Ma Jinwoo, confident, said that Weakling would never be able to face him without help. Meanwhile, Lena was showing Marshall her new leg prosthesis. It was a modern model, comfortable and specially adapted for martial arts. Marshall immediately recognized it as technology produced on the planet Artenis. When he asked how much it cost, Lena said she had used her own savings along with Mark's, although she had never consulted him about it. In the end, Mark lost all his money. Marshall, grateful, promised that he would repay it with his life. On the other side, Ma Jinwoo was already getting impatient. He asked what the hell was going on and why they had not started yet. Marshall, determined, took off his coat and set aside his crutch, ready for battle. Before the fight, Lena still had a quick conversation with him. When they finally stood face to face, Ma Jinwoo taunted him, saying that little toy leg would not save him. But Marshall firmly replied that the prosthesis was enough to kick his ass. Lena, a bit nervous, said he should not get too confident. Ma Jinwoo, in turn, said he was not being arrogant but realistic, and launched his attack. The next strike was slow. Marshall easily dodged all the movements and landed a direct kick to Ma Jinwoo's face, knocking him down with a single blow. He himself was surprised and wondered if that had really worked. Before the fight, Lena had already explained to Marshall why he would win easily. In that state, Ma Jinwoo was weaker than an ordinary person. The suppressor collar was not designed for humans from level 1 civilizations. It was made to prevent beings from advanced civilizations from causing trouble. On a human body, the effect was brutal, like giving a rat a tranquilizer dose meant for an elephant. Furthermore, Lena was sure that Ma Jinwoo himself did not fully understand what that collar could do. As he approached the fallen body, Marshall asked how she knew so much. Lena, thoughtful, recalled that about 20 years ago, the Galactic Federation still completely ignored low-level civilizations. At that time, she infiltrated the dirtiest suburbs of various planets, where she spent years reading and studying secret and forbidden documents. Now she believed the aliens would need to start worrying, because that beast they had underestimated might end up killing them all. Later on, Ma Jinwoo was still getting beaten in training. He took blow after blow, unable to fight back. He muttered that if it were not for that damn collar, things would be different. Lena said that was enough for today, and that they would have to leave soon, ending the training. But Marshall was still a little unsure. He asked if that kind of training would really help in the next match. After all, as Ma Jinwoo himself had said, if it were not for the suppressor collar, he would not be losing. Lena took the opportunity to ask what Marshall thought was the real difference between the superior civilizations and them. Marshall answered that maybe it was the ability to use the power of the cosmos. Lena said he was not entirely wrong, but asked him to look at the bigger picture. The real differentiating factor, according to her, was the potential for growth by breaking the limits of common sense. For humans, for example, spitting fire or controlling metals seemed impossible. But for other civilizations, that was something natural. She explained that maybe if humanity reached a higher level, the impossible could become possible. Things like flying through the sky or regenerating lost limbs could cease to be fantasy. The clearest way to measure that potential for advancement was knowledge. The classification of civilizations was based on that. The access to knowledge that superior civilizations had was vastly greater than that of humans. In the end, it all came down to how one used what they had. Even someone extremely strong could have their weaknesses exposed and be defeated. And Ma Jinwoo, from the very beginning, had drawn too much attention. That meant his weaknesses could already have been analyzed and exploited. As Marshall knocked Ma Jinwoo down once again during training, Lena observed and continued explaining that Jinwoo's fighting style resembled that of aliens with regenerative abilities. According to her, this could become a dangerous weakness in the upcoming battles. Marshall was intrigued and asked if Ma Jinwoo was really human. After all, he was from Earth, wasn't he? Lena confirmed that he was. She said he only behaved strangely, but genetically he was 100% human. That had been confirmed when he underwent recovery inside the capsule. Marshall then remarked that even though Jinwoo had won the first preliminary round, nothing had changed for humanity. But Lena explained that such changes would happen gradually. The advancement of a level 1 civilization followed 3 fundamental principles. First, the representative needed to reach the next level on their own. Second, other members of the species could not advance at the same time. And third, as long as the representative maintained their position, the civilization would slowly rise with them. Marshall reflected and summed it up. The more Ma Jinwoo wins, the less humans will suffer on Earth. Over time, they would gain access to the intergalactic knowledge necessary to discover miraculous cures. Cures that could save millions still suffering from the disease left behind by the Federation. At that moment, someone unexpected appeared. It was Acrimian, a journalist, and also an Infurian. Lena noticed her presence and commented that she did seem to be one of those Infurians, those strange creatures that frightened everyone with their to-read minds using a pen-like device. Acrimian hesitated, wondering if Lena also knew about her people, and Lena, in turn, wanted to know what she was doing there at that moment. Acrimian replied that the explanation Lena had given about civilization advancement was somewhat distorted. According to her, the limits of Earthlings had already surpassed level 1 some time ago. In fact, they were much closer to being a level 3 civilization. She explained that normally a perceptible change should have occurred the moment Ma Jinwoo was officially registered as Earth's representative. And then, without anyone noticing, Acrimian was already standing beside Ma Jinwoo. Her speed and precision put everyone on alert. She then asked if they were not curious to know who he really was. She said she could reveal Ma Jinwoo's true identity, a secret that even science had failed to uncover until now. But Marshall stepped in front of Jinwoo and said he did not trust her, at least not an Infurian. Acrimian, thinking it over, decided it might be better to lure Ma Jinwoo somewhere else, where she could remove the suppressor collar and do what needed to be done without attracting attention. She said she understood their distrust and that there was no need to create unnecessary commotion. Even so, she made it clear that if they ever wanted to know Ma Jinwoo's real identity, they just had to let her know. After all, she was dying of curiosity too. And without warning, she removed the mask she wore, revealing her real appearance. Multiple eyes and spikes spread across her face. It was the typical form of an Infurian. Upon seeing that, Marshall looked at Lena and asked what she thought of such a bizarre creature. Lena confessed that she was just trying to stall a bit because she was also curious about Jinwoo. Deep down, everyone there knew they didn't have much choice. They had to bet everything on the last hope they had left and somehow ensure he won the next match. 15 days later, the second preliminary round of Group 8 began. The first competitor to enter the arena was from a civilization ranked at 5,830. He had passed the first round in record time and was known as the guardian of his planet, protecting his people with the power of 400,000 energies combined from his own species. He was the representative of planet Transferi. In the stands, Sapien commented on the massive restraints on the guardian's body, which seemed to contain monstrous power. As soon as they were released, the guardian moved like a wild beast, a ferocious creature. Mark, surprised, remarked that this was not something you saw every day. But Lena reassured him, saying their side also had a trump card ready. And Sapien then introduced the second competitor, the only rank 1 being who had ever defeated a rank 3 civilization. It was the Earthling, Tarak. Jinwoo noticed the boy was in critical condition, walking with crutches, his body swollen and bruised. Mark was outraged to see the condition of their representative and asked how Lena could have allowed that. She explained there was no reason to worry, because that level of injury meant nothing to him. His regeneration was powerful enough. As soon as Jinwoo stepped into the arena, his body healed completely. He threw aside the crutch and shattered the cast as if they were mere props. Marcel was impressed by his power and believed the training had paid off. He tried to encourage him, reminding him of everything he had been through. Jinwoo himself felt humiliated by those opponents and promised that their race would pay for it. Still, since he had made a previous promise, he decided to first deal with the giant opponent standing before him. Curiously, he noted internally that the opponent somewhat resembled someone he knew because of the teeth and the hair. Even before the fight began, Jinwoo noticed his energy flow had reversed again. That meant, just like in the previous battle, he would not be able to use any martial arts. His only option was to wait for his flow to stabilize over time. Meanwhile, the organized supporters from planet Transferi shouted enthusiastically, cheering for the Guardian Birkin, the hero who had saved their entire planet from dangerous monsters. Mark commented on how impressive the Guardian seemed. After all, he was the defender of an entire world. But Lena explained that his title might be similar to Marcel. Marcel's, who was also called the most powerful martial artist on Earth. Even so, Marcel felt insulted by the comparison. Lena, on the other hand, knew this opponent would not be easy to defeat. Suddenly, one of the inhabitants of Transferry blew into a strange instrument that resembled a huge megaphone. The sound that came out was so loud it nearly deafened the entire audience. Upon hearing that cry, Birkin's behavior changed completely. In the blink of an eye, he threw a massive punch at Jinwoo. The blow was so powerful that the arena's energy barrier had to activate to protect the crowd. And Sapien commented that after a hit like that, victory was clearly guaranteed for Transferry. Some wondered whether Birkin's previous opponent had regeneration abilities too, since they were also defeated with a single punch. However, with Jinwoo, the situation was different. He was still standing. His entire body began to regenerate rapidly. Even so, he had subtly shifted his position at the last moment, which avoided a fatal blow. The only part of his body that was destroyed and had to be recreated was his left arm. And Sapien acknowledged that the regeneration technique Jinwoo used was interesting. However, Jinwoo himself noticed that his regeneration was not perfect in this fight. The areas hit by that strange energy, such as his left arm, were reacting differently and still remained raw and exposed. Lena then commented to Marcel that their plan had worked. Mark, confused, asked if she was already celebrating. He thought she had lost her mind. But Lena decided to explain everything calmly. After one of the training sessions in which Marcel had simply beaten up Jinwoo, she had asked an important question. She wanted to know if he had noticed any difference in the boy. Marcel said Jinwoo was not just different. Even while wearing the suppressor, he was slowly becoming stronger and faster. He could feel the risk increasing every day. During training, he had even gotten hurt from one of the strikes. When Lena heard that, she concluded that maybe 2 more weeks would be enough for Jinwoo to be well trained. She said she would quickly go to headquarters and return soon. Marcel continued training with Jinwoo, even without fully understanding Lena's plans. Despite his doubts, he chose to maintain discipline. In the middle of the training, however, a conflict arose. Someone questioned whether it even made sense to continue. They thought it was absurd to keep going with that kind of training and told Marcel to stop, saying it was impossible to train him that way. Marcel, however, knew exactly how pathetic he must have looked in Jinwoo's eyes. With the suppressor active, he could not even endure the impact of the punches. His movements were slow, and Jinwoo's martial arts techniques were clearly superior. Even so, Marcel believed that, just like water wears away stone, with persistence and repetition, the attacks would eventually hit the target. At that moment, Jinwoo's regenerative ability was failing. Marcel observed that even someone like him could defeat Jinwoo in that condition. Trying to see the bright side, he commented that such bad luck only happens once in a lifetime. In the present, Jinwoo himself reflected that, as absurd as it sounded, that type of training had really helped. Marcel remarked that with the power Jinwoo possessed, he would never listen to anyone's advice. That was why they called it training, even though the real objective was to make him learn naturally. That had been Lena's idea from the beginning. After observing him for a while, Lena concluded that someone as prideful as Jinwoo needed an indirect approach. For him, direct persuasion would not work. What mattered at that moment was that he managed to dodge Birkin's critical attack. Akramine, watching the fight, commented that it was impressive how a level 1 civilization knew so much about the weaknesses of regeneration. The reason they had chosen to fight in the other arena, where the suppressor could not be removed, was precisely to prepare Jinwoo to deal with this kind of situation in a real scenario. Ackerman herself admitted that Lena was surprisingly smart and sharp. Unlike the first round, where Jinwoo had relied on luck in combat, now he would truly need to put his skills to the test. The people from Transferry were not expecting that. Twin mocked them, calling them idiots. He said it was no wonder that even with so much power, that civilization still had not moved past level 2. He believed it would be much more advantageous for the Earthling to win than for Birkin himself. When Birkin launched his massive fist directly at Jinwoo, the impact was severe. Although Jinwoo managed to dodge, his body was not regenerating as it should. He was healing, yes, but very slowly, especially considering his power level. Mark, confused, asked what was happening. He believed that someone from Transferry could only manipulate their own power. Lena explained that their ability was actually focused on support. What they did was control their own energy and transfer it to others. Every living being, however, has a limit to the energy it can receive. What Birkin did was dump all that energy directly into the enemy's body. This caused such a massive overload that, if the target did not explode, at the very least their energy-controlling organs would suffer serious damage. That made techniques like regeneration impossible. Mark asked if that kind of attack did not consume a lot of the user's own energy. Lena confirmed that it did. However, in Birkin's case, his energy reserves were practically infinite. Lena knew very well that if Birkin kept using those attacks, the situation would get more and more difficult for Jinwoo. What the inhabitants of Transferi expected was for the Earthling to explode from the very first impact. That was why Birkin's first strike was unique. There would not be another like it in that match. When they realized that Jinwoo was still alive, the audience from Transferi began to grow nervous. Some threw cans at the trumpet supporter and shouted, asking why he was not doing anything. They begged him to shout to help the Guardian, but the man truly did not know what to do. The truth was that the explosion of energy Birkin had used could only be activated a few times per day. That was why the team meticulously analyzed each opponent before the match. But this time, the plan had not worked. Even so, the supporter picked up the megaphone again, shouting to motivate Birkin. The Guardian reacted immediately, becoming faster and more aggressive. Jinwoo understood in that moment what their real trick was. It was not just about strength. The supporter and the crowd were directly connected to the rhythm of the fight. No wonder Birkin himself did not seem to know how to fight very well on his own. Dodging the brute's blows, Jinwoo landed a precise counterattack, knocking out several of the creature's teeth. And Sapien acknowledged the feat, observing that competitor Jinwoo had finally managed to respond to the giant Birkin. Lena, moved, commented that he seemed to be drawing inspiration from Marcel. But Marcel himself, who knew Jinwoo's fighting style well, thought that did not make sense. He knew from the start that Jinwoo was naturally skilled. The supporter, irritated by the enemy's progress, shouted again that the Guardian could not lose to such a weakling. He went back to using the megaphone, but Dial, annoyed, asked whether he truly believed that shouting louder would solve the situation. That was when Jinwoo finally realized something. The energy was not coming only from the sound. There was another source hidden at the center of the arena. Realizing this, Jinwoo moved away from the central area. One of the Transferi, alarmed, concluded that the Earthling had already discovered their plan. He ordered Birkin to use the massive strike again. The entire arena filled with the Guardian's energy. The attack was so brutal that half of Jinwoo's body vanished instantly. The supporter, believing the fight was over, celebrated and said the victory was guaranteed. The spectators from Transferi began to cheer, convinced they had won. But something unexpected happened. Birkin himself approached Jinwoo's body and began transferring energy to him, stimulating his regeneration. With seriousness, Birkin asked Jinwoo to stand up and finish the fight once and for all. And Sapien noted that Jinwoo was not moving. If he did not stand up soon, the match would be called off. Lena panicked. Desperate, she almost rushed into the arena. At that moment, something was happening inside Jinwoo's body. The energy being transferred by Birkin also carried his memories. In this way, Jinwoo began having visions of the Guardian's past. He saw that Birkin had been born as part of a laboratory experiment. From the moment of his birth, he had been artificially strengthened to become the planet's protector. Energy was injected directly into his body. But it was not only physical power, he also received theoretical instruction about the use of force. He was taught that his race, since ancient times, had specialized in controlling the flow of cosmic force. Over time, they had mastered the individual use of this energy. This allowed them to regenerate their bodies, strengthen themselves, or transfer energy to others. Birkin's core, where his true power resided, was being supplied by 300,000 people from Transferi. However, Birkin always had trouble during the lessons. He would often fall asleep, and when he woke up, he was in different places. He seemed to be under the control of some higher force. He would awaken already, in Guardian form, ready to face monsters without knowing how he had gotten there. The supporter, amidst all of this, kept talking. He asked how Birkin felt being the great guardian of the planet, fueled by the energy of 300,000 people. The supporter, named Kalyan, always carried his trumpet and a huge loudspeaker. He believed Birkin might have felt uncomfortable at first, but would soon get used to it. After all, everyone was counting on him. When monsters attacked or disasters struck, it was Birkin, the Guardian, who appeared to save everyone. He was admired by many, seen as a symbol of hope. However, at headquarters, Kalyan received a direct order. They needed to fight without causing so much destruction. He protested, saying it was impossible because every time Birkin used his attacks, the surrounding environment was destroyed. But the commander explained that the constant damage was severely affecting civilian life, and since the civilians were the very source of the Guardian's energy, it was necessary to preserve their routines. The commander then asked Birkin if he could control it, and the boy replied yes, that he would try to be more careful. But Kalyan disagreed, saying he should not accept orders like that so easily. Later, when Birkin fell asleep, he suddenly woke up in the middle of a battle against a monster. His mind was confused, torn between the commander's orders and Kalyan's shouts demanding he attack without hesitation. Without control, Birkin unleashed a powerful energy attack that destroyed a significant part of the planet. After that, he fell asleep again, as if completely drained. Kalyan begged for one more chance, saying he could still prove the value of the Guardian. But the commander refused. used. Injecting more energy into that body was far too dangerous. Kalyan, however, did not care about the risks. To him, what mattered was defeating monsters and preparing for the upcoming tournament. It was the only way their civilization could evolve. However, something had gone out of control. Birkin no longer seemed like a hero. Little by little, he was turning into a monster, a deformed and unstable creature. When Jinwoo stood up amidst the chaos, he found Birkin in front of him. He realized it had to end. Without hesitation, he punched the Guardian in the face, knocking him down hard. He said he would no longer take orders from anyone. Then he turned to Kalyan, saying that even the planet's tiny weapon wanted to speak for itself. Beside him, Lena confirmed his words. She had always believed that Birkin deserved more than being a tool. Even in defeat, Kalyan insisted he had won that battle. He asked the Guardian if he understood what he had just done, but Birkin, tired, replied that he no longer wanted to continue in the tournament. Kalyan would not accept that answer. He shouted for him to stop acting like a child, ordering him to get up and defeat the enemy. The supporters from the Transferi team, seeing how the Guardian was being treated, protested. They wanted to know who Kalyan thought he was to speak to the Guardian that way. But Birkin himself said it was no longer necessary. He would no longer be part of that people's future. Soon after, it was decided that the energy supply to Birkin's body would be shut down. He would now go through the disposal process. They told Kalyan that the monster recently defeated was the last of its kind. And although it was publicly known that those creatures were mutants, the government knew the truth. Each of those monsters defeated by Birkin had actually been a failed experiment. They were artificially created guardians from the past that had gone wrong. The commander made it clear that with the fall of the last of those monsters, there was no longer any immediate threat. Kalyan tried to argue that the GSP tournament was still ahead, but was informed that the elders had decided not to participate. Even if it meant humiliation and risks for the future, they believed it was the best choice for their race. Even so, Kalyan questioned whether that was truly the best decision. He believed Birkin could still fight for them, because he too was part of that civilization. But the commander explained that Birkin was merely a weapon, an experiment designed for extermination, and that his existence depended on a constant supply of vital force. Kalyan still seemed unable to understand his own limits. Even so, he asked for one last chance to fight. However, Birkin himself declared that his job was done. His role was finished. In the beginning, everyone had fond memories of the time when he was still seen as a hero. But over time, Kalyan had been corrupted by power. He shouted, accusing Birkin of acting like a weakling. He said that the ones who truly deserved peace were those who fought for it, and he reminded them that if they managed to reach the tournament finals, their civilization would have the chance to ascend in level. Even with an incomplete body, Birkin could still evolve. He had the potential to become something greater. Forced by Kalyan, who played his trumpet like a final command, the Guardian's body reacted. The transformation happened once again. Birkin took on the form of a gigantic golem made of pure energy. That appearance was unlike any of his previous forms. It was something entirely new. Jinwoo, upon seeing this transformation, understood the difference. That new version of the Guardian was incomparably more powerful. Kalyan knew this was all or nothing. At this stage, Birkin had fused with energy itself. A single punch from him was enough to destroy part of the arena. Even so, Jinwoo remained unharmed. He had dodged with precision. It was the perfect moment to strike back. In truth, the golem's attack had grazed him and torn off one of his pinky fingers. But Jinwoo had already prepared. He had stolen an ability from the enemy and imbued his own fist with energy from Team Transferi. This allowed him to exchange blows directly with the energy golem. His punches pierced the enemy's body, but Birkin continuously regenerated, as if made of water. Even after a long exchange of blows, Birkin could barely land a hit. Still, hope among the humans remained faint. Kalyan realized that Jinwoo was reaching his limit. His arms had been disintegrated from striking too much. The energy he had absorbed was not enough to withstand Birkin's power. Observing the situation, Kalyan claimed it was foolishness. The Guardian was constantly receiving life energy from his entire people. To him, it was obvious that an inferior human like Jinwoo could never win, and the next attack was about to happen. Birkin was going to strike while Jinwoo was still in the air, defenseless. Kalyan ordered the Guardian to end it all at once, but Jinwoo had no intention of dodging. From the beginning, he already knew what to do. He charged directly toward Birkin's mouth because that was where the next concentrated energy blast would come from. Meanwhile, Ackerman watched and lamented. To her, the human had thrown away his life. At that exact moment, in the middle of the forming explosion, a new god awakened. He was a being from a 5th-level civilization. Sensing that energy, he asked if it came from the Sapien district. It had been a long time time since he had seen his younger brother. This new being was the representative of the first-ranked civilization. His name was Mulender, the greatest warrior of his people. The explosion was so intense that even Leviathan had to intervene. Several energy arms were summoned to hold the barrier around the arena, preventing it from being destroyed. Leviathan observed that even a Tier 4 energy barrier was reacting to that battle. He acknowledged that the lower-level civilizations were truly surprising. The members of Team Transferi, upon seeing Birkin still standing, believed he had won, but he soon turned and apologized. Then, his body exploded. When the headless body fell to the ground, the true victor was revealed. Jinwal, even without both arms, remained standing. He said that Birkin was a fool. Until the very end, he hesitated. He did not want to kill anyone. That was why Jinwal took advantage of that hesitation, entered the golem's head, and used all that energy to force him into self-destruction. He declared that his mission was complete. The favor had been repaid. The death the Guardian longed for had finally occurred. Leviathan, as the highest authority, announced that the winner of the fight was the human Jinwal. Lena, moved, confirmed that this was the right outcome. However, Marcel could not hide his concern. As expected, Kalyan rushed to check on Birkin's condition. In front of the Guardian's body, he wondered what the human had done. After all, Jinwal's attacks did not even seem to affect the Guardian's body. Still recovering, Jinwal explained that it had not been a fight to inflict damage. When he asked about the trick, it became clear that the real secret was something else. He had shared his own key with Birkin, and the attacks were merely conduits for that energy to enter the Guardian's body. Jinwal was slowly injecting his key into Birkin's energy body. The situation could be compared to an extremely full glass of water. What he did was continue pouring in energy until the glass overflowed completely, until it could no longer hold anything else. That was the true plan. Kalyan, upon realizing what had happened, acknowledged that if it weren't for Jinwal, Birkin would never have reached that point. Even so, part of Team Transferi began to complain. They said that Kalyan had just stood there doing nothing, that he should have fought too. According to them, everyone had donated their energy for nothing. That was why they had lost to the human Homero. That was the promise, that their energy would be used wisely. And if they hadn't wasted everything on that Guardian, maybe the outcome would have been different. But Kalyan replied that he would not accept people talking about Birkin like that. To him, the Guardian was the true hero of their race. His people belonged to a complacent civilization that had never known real peace. They had always been arrogant, insensitive, and cursed. Everything had gotten even worse with the arrival of the Galactic Federation, made up of hypocritical gods who interfered under the guise of justice. At that moment, Leviathan, enraged, intervened brutally. He exploded Kalyan's head, saying it was better not to insult the gods. After that, he ordered the human to leave the arena as well. Jinwal, increasingly impatient with that authoritarian being, began to lose his temper. But before he could act, another god appeared, entering the arena directly. He asked if he had arrived late. The arrival of this being caused an immediate impact. Leviathan, surprised and displeased, demanded to know what he was doing there. Everyone present lowered their heads and bowed to him in reverence. Even Jinwal, despite the tension, was sweating cold. The presence of that being commanded absolute respect. He was standing before Mulender. Mulender asked if the human in front of him was the winner of the battle. And Jinwal, still breathless, confirmed that he was. He was excited. He had finally found the pinnacle of that universe. Even with everyone else lowering their heads, including Lena, who usually avoided that kind of submission, he kept his eyes fixed. Jinwal stared directly at Mulender, without looking away. To him, there was no doubt. Mulender was the most powerful being in the universe. Even so, Leviathan, uncomfortable with the situation, asked why that insufferable was there. The sight of him made him nauseous. He thought all of this was just provocation. The text then explains that this universal devotion to Mulender was not just a cultural matter. It was an effect imprinted in the very cells of all living beings since the Great Galactic War. That war took place about 100 million years ago, when the universe faced an extreme resource crisis. The conflict spread, and over 3,000 years, half of all existing civilizations were completely destroyed. It was in this chaotic scenario that Mulender, a member of the sapient race, took action. He intervened and, in just 10 days, ended the war that no one else could control. From that point on, a new order was established. Civilizations began to worship Mulender and his companions as gods, even though they were just a species like any other. That was the event that gave rise to the Galactic Alliance. Even with all that history being revered, Leviathan was visibly furious. A broadcasting robot reported that with Mulender's arrival, the tournament's audience had returned to the top of intergalactic viewership rankings. But Leviathan, consumed by anger, destroyed the robot on the spot. He said the high numbers were not thanks to Mulender, but because of his own ability to create entertainment. Leviathan then demanded that Mulender immediately leave the arena. He said that his presence violated the rules. But the other god replied calmly. He said he never imagined he would hear that from his own brother. He assured that he would not stay long. He just just wanted to congratulate the human who had defeated an opponent with such an absurd energy level. Even with the tension rising, Leviathan stepped down into the arena, repeating that Melinda should leave. By ignoring that order, Melinda was also ignoring his authority. Melinda commented that he had heard rumors about his brother. Supposedly, he had recently broken his own rules and was acting on his own. His sector, in fact, was facing serious problems. Leviathan questioned what he really knew about any of that, since that arena was his territory, and his word was the highest authority in that space. Melinda replied that his brother was still as reckless as ever, but Leviathan warned him not to underestimate him. It was then that Leviathan created a gravitational mass, a sphere made of pure energy similar to a black hole. That sphere began to suck in everything around it, destroying the environment catastrophically. Melinda thought that was just like him. He always overreacted. Leviathan's power was comparable to that of a god, with the ability to dismantle and reconstruct any matter. Any substance, organic or inorganic, that touched that sphere would instantly dissolve. Melinda wondered if his brother did not care that his own audience might be destroyed along with everything else. Leviathan stated that he was not the one who had started the fight. With that, Melinda decided to end it. He ordered all the judges from Sector 3 to protect the civilians present in the arena. Virtus, obeying his supreme god and emissary, activated his light power to shield everyone. At his side were the judges Dominiel and Etherion. Meanwhile, Melinda asked if it was now possible to deal with Leviathan. However, he noticed that Jinwal was still there, screaming in pain. He had not been protected by the light barrier and was being slowly disintegrated. Even so, he resisted the gravitational force with all his strength. Melinda admired the warrior's resilience and asked Jinwal to hang on a little longer, because it would all be over soon. Then, Melinda asked if Leviathan was satisfied with the destruction he had caused. But his brother only reconstructed everything he had undone into an even larger mass of destruction. He then reminded Mulender that he was the one who had created the restrictions of that arena, and in his current state, not even Mulender could stop him, since he was wearing a containment bracelet. Mulender, however, said that Leviathan was forgetting an important detail. Being inside the arena gave him the right to use his powers. Then, with ease, he removed the bracelet. With a simple gesture of his fingers, he completely nullified Leviathan's power and even destroyed one of that planet's moons with the same motion. After that, Melinda apologized for the incident. He said he would leave the rest of the matches in his brother's hands. As he said goodbye, he told Jinwal that it had been a pleasure to meet him and that he hoped to see him again at another opportunity where they could talk more. He recommended that he make sure to arrive at the main arena on time. Lena, confused, wondered what he meant by on time. Meanwhile, Jinwal left the area completely regenerated but visibly terrified. When Lena approached to ask if he was all right, Jinwal grabbed her and asked who that man was who had appeared out of nowhere. Lena explained that he was Mulender, the representative of the End Sapiens and the final opponent of the tournament. Jinwal, however, had a strange feeling. When Mulender used his power, he experienced an inexplicable deja vu. In fact, ever since he had set foot in that place, a sense of familiarity had been following him. To figure out what it meant, he knew he had to find that man again, because he, Jinwal, was the one who would reach the top of that tournament. Now it had become personal. Across the universe, the comments about what had happened in the arena were spreading rapidly. The topic was even more talked about because the narrator had changed. Leviathan was no longer in any condition to continue, so the one who temporarily took over the narration was Belcanos. She began presenting the match between Braxon, the representative of the Decabusians, and Kamar, the representative of the Sorrentians. Meanwhile, the Terracans watched the battle attentively. Something curious happened during that moment. Lena was not present, but Jinwal was. That made Marcel wonder why exactly they were there watching that match. Mark explained that the winner of that fight would be Earth's next opponent. Even so, Marcel did not understand why he had to be present too. Mark apologized, but said he did not intend to deal with that ticking time bomb alone next to him. To Marcel, that was exactly why Lena should have been there, but Mark explained that she was working part-time. During the first round of the tournament, she had been completely exhausted after taking on the cost of Marcel's prosthetic. It was not just her. Marshall was also working as a mascot, entertaining the crowd. That was why Marcel had not seen his trainer anymore. He was confused and asked how they were able to work on such an advanced planet. Mark replied that precisely because it was such an advanced planet, Earthlings ended up fitting well in service roles. Due to the strategic location of planet GSP, lower civilizations were not allowed to stay there for long. At the same time, highly advanced civilizations had no reason to work in a place like that. Only those with specialized professions rations were sent to the planet, while the rest of the population indulged in their own desires, whether through gambling, tourism, or simply leisure. The activity surrounding the arena's betting system was massive. The only ones truly seeking a chance to rise in rank were civilizations of level 1 or 2. The others were there just for fun and gambling. Meanwhile, Mark noticed that Jinwoo was watching the battle with intense focus. He wondered if that guy had always been so concentrated. In the match, Braxton, the metallic creature, won, even though he was severely damaged. As the next matches took place, Jinwoo remained seated, calmly observing everything. After some time, Mark nudged his arm and pointed out that 6 hours had already passed. He asked if Jinwoo was going to just keep watching the matches. Jinwoo, in turn, asked if the others were only there because of him. Mark confirmed, explaining that was the only reason they were all gathered. Jinwoo then suggested they could leave if they preferred, because he would be fine on his own. Mark, alarmed by the idea, replied that no way. If Jinwoo disappeared like last time, he would be in serious trouble. However, Jinwoo reassured everyone. He said there was nothing to worry about. Now he had his own reasons to keep participating in all of that. Upon hearing this, Mark stood up, said he had work to do, and asked if Marcel would join him. Marcel replied that he preferred to stay a bit longer. As he left the arena, Mark reflected. Jinwoo was finally starting to talk like a normal person. Now he really did seem like the savior of Earth. Meanwhile, Marcel remained with Jinwoo, but he was visibly uncomfortable. After all, it was just the two of them, with no training, no fighting, just waiting. Jinwoo used the silent moment to break the ice by asking a question. He wanted to know if Marcel had anything to say about fighting styles, like he had done last time. Marcel replied that he was not strong enough to teach anything. Even so, Jinwoo said he already knew that. He knew Marcel was weak even without him saying it. However, he had realized something important. There were two types of talent. One was the talent to become strong, and the other was the talent to make others strong. And Marcel was clearly the second type. Hearing that, Marcel said that in that case, he could at least offer some advice. He revealed that he was always curious about something when watching Jinwoo's matches. At that moment, Lena appeared and was surprised to see the two of them talking normally. She wondered to herself if she was going crazy or if that was really happening. 1 month passed, and finally the day of the battle between Jinwoo and Braxton arrived, the same opponent he had analyzed carefully. When the fight started, Kyranos, watching from afar, wondered what that earthling was doing. Jinwoo simply closed his eyes as soon as the fight began. Maybe he was trying to provoke his opponent. Braxton, irritated, said he was acting too full of himself just because he had defeated an enemy from a level 3 civilization. He charged forward with his spear in hand, but Jinwoo counterattacked immediately. He used the power of the Pixes, creating a magnetic field that pulled Braxton's metallic body. Then he activated the demonic blood technique and pierced the enemy with a single strike. In just 30 seconds, the fight was over. Belcanos remarked that it was probably a new record. Earlier, Marcel had told Jinwoo that maybe with that ability, he could reduce the side effects of suppression. Jinwoo acknowledged that the red-haired kid was actually pretty smart. Later, the match of the representative from the Mentor civilization took place. This was a people who fought almost entirely based on their battle instincts. They were known for dominating fights, even when at a disadvantage, relying purely on strength. However, their representative was completely defeated by Jinwoo, who ended the fight without any difficulty. Lena, watching the scene, started to wonder if that was Jinwoo's true power. She remembered the conversation she had with him when they first arrived, and it was just him and Marcel. At the time, Lena had commented that if Jinwoo's energy flow were interrupted, it might not be that serious. But he explained that without energy, his body could barely move. No one there really understood how the so-called Q worked, but Jinwoo knew a way to correct his own energy flow. The problem was that if he got attacked while in that state, a reverse energy flow could occur, and that would be extremely dangerous. Lena asked if he could control this energy flow. Jinwoo confirmed, saying that technique was usually used when something was directly interfering with his internal energy circulation. Lena then asked what would happen if he used that technique combined with the power of the Guardian, and the answer came shortly after: another easy win. In the last 2 rounds he fought, Jinwoo had finished the matches in under 30 seconds. Lena thought to herself that the boy really did seem blessed. Later at the cafe, Jinwoo was having fun squeezing a purple slime with his hands. Marcel asked why he always did that, and Jinwoo replied that it just felt more comfortable that way. Marcel then commented to Lena that he had heard she and Mark were working part-time there in GSP and asked if it was true. Lena confirmed. She told him not to worry about it. In fact, they were doing quite well. Marcel said he had received a prosthetic leg from her and wanted to return the favor, but she explained that the money had already been completely recovered. She paid Mark back in just 2 weeks. Marcel was surprised and asked how that was even possible. Lena explained that the hourly pay there was 500 times higher than in any place on Earth. In the end, the Earthlings who were working there had nothing to complain about. Jinwoo then returned to the main topic. He said that setting aside those conversations, those were the only people actually participating in the tournament. He had analyzed all the matches since the second round, but all the opponents were far too weak. Their abilities were not even worth absorbing, and even if they were, they would be useless against that guy with wings. Lena asked who he was talking about. That was when Twinkus appeared and asked if he was referring to Melender. Up until that moment, Jinwoo still had not found his true place. That was when Twinkus showed up to talk to him. He said he had something to show him. Lena, noticing Twinkus approaching, immediately became suspicious. It seemed too shady, and she made it clear they were not going to allow that. But Twinkus insisted that he needed to take Jinwoo somewhere else because too many eyes were watching. He said Lena was not understanding the situation. Marcel, for his part, said he saw no reason to talk to someone like Twinkus. Twinkus himself replied that he also had nothing to say to a weakling like him. The conversation was not with Marcel, it was with Jinwoo. Jinwoo responded coldly, saying he also had no business with him and that he intended to leave. That was when Twinkus asked if he did not desire power. If he truly wanted that, then he should go with him. He said he could teach him a way to take his strength to the next level. Later, it became clear that Jinwoo had accepted to go with Twinkus because he was addicted to power. Marcel, watching from a distance, questioned why Twinkus wanted to help, recalling that the Pixes had attacked them before. Lena confirmed it, but explained that something had changed since then. The attacks had taken place on Z Street, one of the most deserted areas of the city, and also inside the promotion hall, which barely received visitors. Now, however, they were inside the stadium. It was literally impossible for Twinkus to do anything against them there. However, once they arrived at the agreed location, the scene was highly suspicious. It was full of muscular Pixes with extremely angry expressions. The atmosphere was tense. Jinwoo, impatient, said he did not have all day and told them to get straight to the point. Even with all the furious Pixes, Twinkus stated that there was something more important than revenge. He was there to make an offer. If Jinwoo accepted, his power would increase significantly. To that end, he presented a special item. One of Twinkus's subordinates handed over a contract and a ring. Lena took the document and started reading it carefully. Clause 1, Article 1, stated that Jinwoo would have to wear the Ring of Eternal Steel in all future matches. Clause 2 required him to secure at least one victory in the main tournament. Failure to comply would result in a payment of 50 million yen. Lena was shocked. It said this was equivalent to about $25 billion. Twinkus explained that he was offering that resource to help Jinwoo overcome the limits of an inferior civilization. He claimed that even primitive beings like them should recognize the value of such an artifact. According to him, the laws of the Galactic Federation forbade any unauthorized direct interference between civilizations. That was why the offer was being made in the form of a donation with simple contractual conditions. Jinwoo was thoughtful. He knew that could be useful, especially if it was related to the power of the Pixes. Even so, Lena remained suspicious and wanted to know why they were suddenly offering help. Twinkus, evasive, replied that beings like them did not need to understand the reasons behind it. Then someone appeared, provoking Twinkus by calling him Little Prince. Twinkus immediately recognized him and asked what Bolter was doing there. Bolter, from the Iron Stand civilization, responded with irony, saying that talking like that hurt his feelings. Bolter said he had come with good intentions. He claimed that thanks to the Earthlings, Arctatum stocks were booming, but he did not understand why those primitive creatures were blocking his path. He told them to move aside, but no one moved, so he advanced and attacked Jinwoo directly, who blocked the strike with ease. This surprised Bolter himself, who acknowledged that maybe this was the Earthling who had joined the competition. Soon after, Bolter took out a ring and began provoking. He said it made no sense to offer something like that. He commented that the Little Prince was desperate, trying to raise the level of the opponent who had defeated him, just to preserve the wounded pride of his race. He considered it shameful. He even added that this so-called Eternal Steel had already been considered outdated for a long time, but out of respect for the ancient alliances between civilizations, he decided to give the advice anyway. He just asked that they not take it personally. Twinkus then made a proposal. He asked what Bolter thought about facing the Earthlings right there. If Bolter won, the Earthlings would surrender to his civilization for the rest of their lives. Bolter accepted the challenge, making it clear that he expected the promise to be kept. He said he had been looking forward to that moment. After he left, Twinkus reinforced that everyone had heard the condition. Jinwoo, unfazed, tore up the contract in front of everyone, saying it was just trash. Twinkus became angry and asked if he still did not recognize the value of the item, even after having fought against it. But Jinwoo explained that while the item was not completely useless, he already had other ways to become stronger. Twinkus, impatient, reminded everyone that they were in controlled territory and demanded they sign the contract immediately. However, Lena, holding a security device in her hand, warned everyone not to make any rash decisions. That was when Jinwoo stepped forward. Calmly, he placed his finger on Twinkus's forehead, took the ring back, and said that if Twinkus wanted, they could make a new contract with different terms. He declared that the metal ring could be used, and also said he would fight the weird lizard with glasses that was standing nearby. Twinkus realized he had made a huge mistake. He had underestimated Jinwoo, thinking he was just a brute. Now he could see that his intelligence was on another level. Later, on the 300th floor of a building with more than 300 stories, Jinwoo was in a training arena, trying to find a way to remove the energy suppressor that limited his powers. After much effort, he managed to break free completely. His new opponent was a member of the Ironstain race, known for their immense strength and metallic skin. The Ironstain warrior remarked that he did not understand why Jinwoo was so bold. He said there was no way to escape now. Jinwoo, holding the eternal steel ring, challenged him directly. The Ironstain warrior replied that facing such an inferior civilization was an insult. He lunged forward, trying to crush Jinwoo's hand, but was surprised by a violent punch to the face. He could not break free, as Jinwoo's body was as rigid as metal. The Ironstain warrior explained that this was the ability of his people. They could completely transform their bodies, inside and out, into metal. In other words, they believed it was impossible for an Earthling to defeat them. But Jinwoo completely disagreed. To him, what truly mattered was who wielded the power, not the power itself. He said he came from a completely different era. In those times, there were insane people who spent their lives trying to split mountains in half using only wooden sticks. Before being sealed away, he had the chance to meet one of those masters. And at that moment, with the eternal steel ring in hand, Jinwoo began to forge his own sword. In the blink of an eye, Jinwoo used the same legendary strike of the Sword Emperor. In an instant, he passed through the enemy as if slicing through air. The lizard from the Ironstain race did not even have time to react. He only saw Jinwoo pass by, and right after, his body was completely destroyed. Jinwoo, observing the scene, firmly reinforced that this was exactly how it was done. Everyone around was in complete shock. Then he made it clear that he no longer wanted to waste time with useless training like that. Later, Commander Clarice still could not believe that a ring made from that type of metal could be so valuable. She acknowledged that anything which increased Earth's representative's power was welcome, but she found it strange to offer something so powerful to a former enemy. Lena explained that there was no reason to worry. That was not just any gift. In truth, the decision had been made to preserve the pride of their civilization. Meanwhile, Jinwoo commented that the next match was about to begin and headed off to watch the current fight, since Clarice could not attend. They said they would talk later. When alone, Marcel commented to Clarice that Jinwoo was truly impressive. He said that Jinwoo had saved Earth in just a few months, while he himself felt he had not done enough. But Clarice responded seriously that this was not true. Marcel had done more than enough, and everyone was alive thanks to his efforts. It was not fair to think that way. In the arena, Panon's fight was happening in front of an attentive crowd. He was at a major disadvantage. He was being beaten so badly that he could not find any opening to counterattack. The opponent was Ragnar, representative of the Titanrians. Despite being small and floating in the center of the arena, Ragnar struck Panon with what seemed to be invisible arms. Lena watched with concern. She could not understand why Panon was acting so recklessly and carelessly. She also did not know much about Ragnar's abilities. That was when she noticed that Grog was present, watching the fight. At first, the two Earthlings thought he might be there for another reason, but they soon remembered that Grog had already helped them before. Lena approached and started a conversation with Grog. She commented that Panon was clearly hiding his true power. She said that compared to Agnes, the opponent Panon had already defeated, Ragnar did not seem that special, but Grog explained that his brother was not in good condition. At the start of each match, he could barely activate his energy. That made Lena suspect that Panon might be facing the same side effects Jinwoo had suffered before. Panon continued to get beaten. He was repeatedly struck by Ragnar's invisible arms, massive limbs that only the two of them could see. In one of the blows, Panon was thrown against the arena's barrier, spitting blood. Then he was grabbed and slammed to the ground. Many believed he had been defeated. The 5-second countdown for a possible knockout had begun. But in the final second, Ragnar was caught off guard by Panon's secret technique. A cosmic darkness emerged and trapped him with elastic shadows that began to weaken and corrupt him from within. Jinwoo, who was watching the fight, recognized that technique immediately. He realized it was the same ability that had affected the Judge Virtues previously. Meanwhile, Panon made it clear that Ragnar would never underestimate him again. He explained that those who were unable to control their own cosmic energy could not see his arms, but he could. Panon's next punch landed squarely and destroyed Ragnar's face, ending the fight for good. Panon was declared the winner. Later, Lena explained everything to Grog. She said the reason Panon could not use his power at the beginning of the fight was the suppression device. Grog was surprised and asked why his brother had hidden that from him. Lena answered that it was probably so he would not worry. Besides, that was not easy information to uncover. Grog also wanted to know if Jinwoo was in the same situation. Lena confirmed, but explained that fortunately they had learned a way to mitigate some of those effects. She added that in the future they could teach it to both him and Panon, so they could perform better. Grog, still surprised to be receiving help from them, decided to return the favor. He said there was very important information about the preliminaries final. According to him, the format of the preliminaries had changed completely. Lena found that strange since no official announcement had been made. Grog responded that this was normal, as the announcement was scheduled only for the end of the quarterfinals. Lena was even more confused and asked how they had access to such early information. Grog explained that among third-stage civilizations, some representatives had already been informed. He said that he, Panon, and Kulak had been approached by some strange individuals who revealed the change. Lena asked if they had not found that suspicious. Grog replied that yes, but apparently those people were looking for allies. Since they refused the offer, they did not get more details about who those individuals were or what they wanted. After that, Grog said goodbye, saying he had done his part. Lena, still intrigued, thought about what it all meant. She wanted to understand why the rules were changing and in what direction the tournament was heading. Meanwhile, the last match of the preliminaries was being concluded. Now the competitors would move on to the round of 16. Jinwoo, watching the conclusion of the final match, asked if that was the true level of the participants who were advancing. But Lena was still lost in thought about everything Grog had said. If that story was really true, then they should also have been approached. After all, even with the lowest civilization level, Jinwoo had been standing out in the tournament and attracting attention from everyone. Later in Sector 3, G Street, Lena told Jinwoo everything she knew, and he quickly understood why they were there. He said they were waiting to see if those mysterious individuals would approach them too. Lena believed it would be easier for contact to occur there in public rather than inside the arena. Even though she was reluctant to cooperate with aliens, she knew that in order to understand what was coming in the tournament, they needed this information. Whoever knew more would have the advantage. It was always like that. Jinwoo commented that, at the very least, he hoped those individuals would be strong. And in truth, it was all happening at a good time, since he was also curious about what was going on. However, 3 days passed, and in Z Street, known for being the most dangerous in the region, Jinwoo remarked that so far those mysterious informants had shown no sign. Lena agreed, saying she also did not understand the reason. That was when Ackerman suddenly appeared beside her, nearly making her choke in surprise, and stated that the reason was very obvious. Ackerman explained that if they were waiting for a cooperation proposal for the final stage, it was a shame, because no one would approach them first anymore. He said it was not a matter of strength or ability, but of reputation. Everyone in Sector 3 already knew about Jinwoo's ability to absorb the powers of others. That was why no one wanted to risk getting close and having their abilities stolen. Even so, Ackerman offered to cooperate. She said she could help, but also wanted information in return. She reminded them that besides being a journalist, she was also the representative of her own civilization in the tournament. Upon hearing that, Lena realized Ackerman was speaking with conviction, as if she was certain that the future battles would be team-based. Jinwoo commented that the girls seemed to be the only one among the qualified who actually showed some usefulness. Ackerman partially agreed, saying that perhaps she really was from the most advanced civilization among those present. According to the records, the civilization of Euphoria held the 925th position in the universal ranking. Jinwoo added that she seemed mysterious, as if she was hiding a secret ability. However, Lena warned that they should not get close to her so easily. Ackerman replied that in truth, the girl possessed abilities that could be tempting for someone like Jinwoo. At that moment, Lena realized something important and asked if Ackerman also did not have a team to form. The answer was that, based on her combat power, anyone would want to team up with her. However, Lena reminded her that, at the beginning, she herself had said no one wanted Earthlings in their groups. That included her. In reality, Ackerman was desperate for a group. Lena explained that the girls' civilization developed technology to steal information. And not just that, they stole absolutely everything about a person, and she was sure they would do that to Jinwoo. That civilization specialized in data theft and trade. If any information about Jinwoo fell into her hands, it would be exposed to the entire universe. Lena thought that inside Jinwoo might lie the greatest secret of humanity's power. For that reason, Ackerman could not get her hands on that content. Still, Ackerman stated that people only knew the tools of that civilization. The girl's real combat skills were separate from that technology. Jinwoo, intrigued, remarked that she was full of hidden tricks. He then decided he would join her group. He was curious to find out what kind of power she was hiding. Meanwhile, Lena, remembering her childhood, thought that the civilization of Euphoria had remained intact during the underworld era. That indicated it might be worth the risk. While everyone was still reflecting on this, Ackerman approached and questioned the situation. During the final round of preliminaries, even if there was theft of information and abilities, there would be no objections. Everything would be allowed. Jinwoo stated that this had been his plan from the beginning. However, Lena was very disappointed. She felt like her opinion was never considered. She then asked how they would recruit the last members of the group. Once again, Ackerman stepped in and asked what they meant by team battle. They had come all this way without knowing the details. The exact rules had not been revealed yet. It became clear that it would not be a group battle, but rather an individual deathmatch. Lena concluded that in that case, forming a team was not for victory, it was for survival. Ackerman ordered everyone to return to the arena immediately, without looking back. Even so, Lena asked if there was something beyond the deathmatch. Ackerman replied that it had already begun. Meanwhile, in the shadows, a creature was preparing to strike. However, when it heard Ackerman's words, it hesitated and backed off. There was still time to choose the right moment to act. And if you made it this far, do not forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the next chapters. Turn on the notification bell so you do not miss anything, and consider becoming a member to directly support this project. It helps a lot to keep bringing this universe to you. Thank you for watching.